I am Yoranto. On this day, 10 years ago, I've done my first speedrun. I have beaten countless world records, ran the game live in front of over 100,000 people and overall held the world record for the longest time, and still do. On my way, I have met many different people, friends, idols, rivals. Let me take you on a journey through the past, with all its ups and downs, my first 10 years of speedrunning, in between fun, world records, grinds, drama, sickness and passion. In early 2012, I was playing Uncharted 3's multiplayer. I enjoyed playing Uncharted 2's and Uncharted 3's multiplayers and was playing them a lot. Naughty Dog added the 2011's The Last of Us announcement to Uncharted TV, which was the first time I saw the game. I found the trailer very scary actually, it had an intense vibe. In 2012, I was waiting for the game. I downloaded every new trailer so I could watch them in case my internet goes out. My internet was really bad back then. In summer 2012, when I reached 10th grade, the school system here in Germany combines the 4 smaller classes to one big class, meaning I now had lessons with many new people. It was a biology lesson when I was standing in front of the classroom with a bunch of strangers, waiting for the teacher to arrive, when I heard someone talking about The Last of Us, the game I had just pre-ordered. I approached him and told him I'm hyped too. We instantly became friends, spent lots of time together and were waiting for Last of Us together. In 2013, when the game came out, I started playing the game but went to the multiplayer, Factions, after a couple hours and I got stuck there. Meanwhile, my friend has already finished the game, told me it was the best game he has ever played and was patiently waiting for me to finally finish the game so he could talk to me about it. I've always been a slow player casually and Factions consumed me too. Back then I still played lots of Uncharted. I would even say I mainly played Uncharted. I got the Platinum trophy a month after Last of Us came out and I would always come back to it when there was a new patch, a new DLC or when a tournament took place. For example, the Apocalypse tournament in October 2013. Which was the biggest Last of Us tournament held to this day, organized by TripleRec, who would eventually become a big streamer and Destiny player, and with prizes and support by Naughty Dog. Back then, almost the entire Last of Us community existed of former Uncharted players. I was pretty new to competitive gaming, but we managed to create a small German team. My friend from school, Lucas Hardy, who was one of the most known German UC3 players back then, Defy Loco from Uncharted's most famous YouTube team Defy, and me. We weren't that bad actually and even managed to win the first match, but got totally demolished in the next matches. It continued like this until 2014. In early 2014 I've uploaded my first Last of Us video, a sniper montage, and in May 2014 I held my first livestream on Twitch, streaming a Last of Us multiplayer tournament called the Olympic Games, which was a just for fun movement tournament. In mid-2014, I bought a PS4 just for Last of Us Remastered. Last of Us on PS3 had a rough time because unlike Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3, Last of Us had no cinema mode and the PS3 didn't have a recording function, meaning you could only record or stream gameplay when you had a capture card, which ended up in Last of Us having almost no streamers or YouTubers. On PS4 the community got split up. Some people stayed on PS3 because they didn't want to pay monthly to play online on PS4, and others were waiting for Uncharted 4 to come out. I, for myself, was still playing both games. I was really enjoying playing Last of Us, and in October 2014 I've done my first challenge run. My goal was to do a stealth kill-all playthrough on Grounded. I still have the recording here actually, but the quality is super bad because I rendered it down to save storage space on my PC. I enjoyed my time playing Last of Us, listening to Eminem's Survival, which in my opinion was a way more fitting song for Last of Us than for Call of Duty Ghosts, just saying. In late 2014 I started taking Last of Us FN a bit more serious. FN stands for Fragate Nation. The website the Uncharted and Last of Us communities were playing competitive matches on. FN basically means esports in this case. Playing regularly, trying to become better, etc. But in January 2015 I completely stopped. I still wanted to reach max level in Uncharted 2 before Uncharted 4 comes out, and didn't play Last of Us for the next 3 months. In April 2015 I achieved max level in Uncharted 2 and immediately on the next day I came back to Last of Us. That was the moment that changed it all. From here on, I basically stopped playing Uncharted entirely and focused my entire life on playing Last of Us. From here on, I will not talk any further about my Factions career and only focus on the speedruns. In mid-2015, a YouTube video appeared in my recommendations, Anthony Caliber's 30950 on easy mode. Back then, I didn't even know such a thing like speedrunning exists. Especially the part where he would just run through the museum fight ignoring every single enemy impressed me. I had finished the game around 15 times, but had no idea you could do that. I watched the video, had almost no idea what was going on, but felt like I could do that as well. Maybe even better. So I started learning the game. I watched Ant play one chapter, then played that chapter by myself. Watched him play the next chapter, then played that chapter by myself. After a few days, I started my first run. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of my first 5 runs, but on my first run I got a 3:24:08. Not bad for a first run, but obviously I hadn't thought about stopping there. One day later, on 3rd August 2015, I got a 3:18:10 and another day later a 3:15:39. I improved very quickly and on 10th August 2015 I got a 3:12:29. One day later a 3:10:32 and then, after less than 2 weeks of running the game, on 15th August 2015 I got a 3:08:37, which was my first world record and beat Ant's time by over a minute. I was not using any splits, simply because I didn't know anything like that existed. And I also had no clue I was on world record pace until I noticed I entered Tommy's Dam in 1 hour and 57 minutes, which was insanely fast.
Oh mein Gott! What the fuck? Nein. Ich bin 1,5 Minuten vom Weltrekord. 1,5 Minuten.
Back then, the run was very casual. At the beginning, I was playing in German, which later turned out to be half a second slower than any other language due to this section where you'd get sprint speed after a dialogue is finished. Most strats were sketchy and overall there were way less movement techniques. Some minor stuff has already been found, for example crouching being faster than walking in some sections. But there were only very few runners when I started and they obviously first focused on reaching the end, getting through the fights in one sitting, etc., instead of looking for micro-optimizations. Speaking of other runners, among a few others, those were Anthony Caliber, Matt, Harley, Root, and Thrill was also part of the community, but not running. At the beginning, I took the route and the strats for granted. In the first weeks, I didn't even think about the possibility of searching for strats, routes, optimizations, etc. I basically watched Ant's world record and tried to do everything the same. My 3:08:37 itself was pretty clean. Of course, from today's standards most fights look super slow, but the only deaths this run had was me missing the deer twice, losing around 40 seconds. The deer shot, by the way, to this day is still one of the hardest tricks in the run. Not even 10 years could change that. At the end of the run I said something to Anthony.
Anthony, man, if you see this, please try this, please try to get this time. It would be a nice battle between us. If you beat my record, then I beat your record, then you beat my record, and it would be great.
And then I got my first world record.
Alter, ich 3:08 36 or 7, I don't know. Ja! Yes, Alter, nice! What the fuck? Junge, ich hab den Weltrekord um 1,5 Minuten. Und er hat halb Minuten, Alter. Ja, Mann, Alter. Woo!
In 2015, the leaderboards looked a bit different. I wasn't a mod yet, and back then we had very many categories. We had categories for every single difficulty and a New Game Plus category for each difficulty. Also even categories like no shots fired. Glitches were only a variable saying yes or no, and we had no separate leaderboards for Left Behind. After my 308.37 on easy mode, I was done with it and wanted to go through each category. In my life, I always had something, a hobby, where I was super competitive and wanted to be the best. As a child it was football, as a teenager it was bodybuilding, and as a young adult it seemed like speedrunning was my next thing, next to playing esports. So for me it seemed logical to just go through every single category and get the world record. Most of the categories just had one runner, which in most cases was Anthony, who also mostly only did one run for each category to have a run on the leaderboards. I did this chronologically with a few exceptions, so after easy mode, normal mode was next. I'm just going through this quickly here because the runs weren't anything special honestly. Ant's normal mode world record was a 3:17.50. On 21st August 2015 I got a 3:14.26. After normal mode I actually did do a small sidestep. Back then we had a 100% category. This is basically the today's all collectibles category plus all conversations, shift doors, alley jokes, etc. The reason we later changed it to all collectibles was because the game has no percentage counter and using the collectibles as a reference seemed to make more sense. On 14th September 2015 I've done a 100% speedrun of Last of Us in 3 hours, 58 minutes and 7 seconds, which was actually the first run ever in that category, and with the time finishing in just under 4 hours, that was actually a run I was and still am proud of. I also remember Ant's mod note when verifying it, which said, "Nice to see a run on this category, good sub 4 run." After that I continued in chronological order and went on with hard mode. Hard mode was actually the category Ant started with, so his time was harder to beat than on normal mode, and therefore I couldn't beat his time within the first attempt. Ant's world record was a 3:24.11 and on 26th September 2015 I got a 3:25.11, missing it by a minute. However, just one day later I got a 3:18.32 and set a new world record for hard mode. The next day I continued with survivor mode. Ant's world record was a 3:26.20 and on 28th September I got a 3:29.38. Until now, before making this video, I thought I got the survivor world record back then, but it actually seems like I didn't. Whatever. After that I actually ran Left Behind for the first time. Back then, the Left Behind glitchless runs basically allowed anything that wasn't the fight skip, where we would basically skip 90% of the DLC. Therefore, the Left Behind runs I did in 2015 were glitchless runs back then, but got shifted to the any percent category in 2016, since they, for example, used the gate trick, which was later banned for glitchless runs. On 1st and 2nd October 2015, I got 4 PBs in Left Behind. My first run was a 38:30. Then I got a 34:34, a 31:57 and finally a 31:21. None of these were world records. This was just a side activity for a day or two. So after this I continued with the main game. After doing some Left Behind runs I have actually done my first grounded run, which over the years ended up being my most ran category. Unfortunately, the footage is missing and I have no recording of my first grounded run. I think that happened because my first run was an absolute disaster and it didn't feel worth it to save the VOD. For the other difficulties, you could see that I basically went in semi-blind and just tried to improvise the easy mode strats into the other categories. I tried that as well for grounded, but that was one too much. And therefore, on 14th October 2015, I got a time of 4 hours, 4 minutes and 21 seconds. Ant's world record was already a 3:16.53, so the difference was huge. Same as the main game leaderboards, the Left Behind leaderboards had categories for each difficulty too. So after that grounded run I did one Left Behind run on normal mode and got a 38:41. A few days later, on 25th October 2015, I ran grounded again and got a 3:43.37, which was way better, but obviously still bad. The strats back then were crazy and my skill exceptional. During the third slums fight I accidentally threw my bottle away. And right on the next 2 enemies I did it again. Then immediately after the fight I had my FN team arguing and shouting in the party.
Mann, wer ist Exekutiven da? Exekutiven da, Exekutiven da! Mann!
Hör auf rumzuschreien, Alter.
Was gab mit Dampfnudeln?
Man, legendary times. The funny thing is, this was no exception, and it wasn't even the only time during this run when that happened.
Ich hab nichts mal gezeigt und ich geh down.
Das kann doch nicht sein, dass du wieder... Mann! Die sind beide wieder One-Shot, sehr schön.
My run had many deaths. Cargo, downtown fight multiple times, Bill's trap, high school, gym, Pittsburgh, hotel. Okay, at this point I feel like I'm just naming you all the chapters in the game. Let's stop that. Throughout the run, especially compared to today, we went very slowly and really took our time. We spent so much time collecting stuff, took out enemies stealthily, which is a rare thing nowadays, used more melee combat, and the entire route was not optimized at all. Also, the strats we were using were very random. I specifically remember the high school strat, for example. We couldn't use any throwables, almost had no ammo, but there were many enemies, so we would basically run through the beginning with the enemies despawning behind us when entering the last room, and there we would always just mash square for melee combat, maybe taking out one enemy with a shotgun and then just praying that we get lucky and maybe Bill or Ellie helping us. Often I died there multiple times in a run. I also had 2 very funny deaths in the first Pittsburgh fight.
Was? Junge, was ist das denn?
Auf welcher Schwierigkeitsgrad spielst du?
Grounded. Mann. Es ist so unfair, Mann. Ich bin so gut gewesen wieder. Ich bin die ganze... Guck mal, was ist das? Der Gegner ist tot, steht wieder auf und killt mich.
Zu recht.
My financial fight was amazing though. In financial, I thought I showed too much skill, so in them I thought it was a good idea to kill myself.
What the fuck?
Also, during the later part of the run, someone spammed messages to me, so a big part of my stream got covered. Fantastic. I also got the David troll twice, where we stun an enemy with a brick or bottle, David then shoots it and therefore cancels the stun animation, making the enemy instantly grab and kill us, losing me multiple minutes.
Nein, ich stehe kurz vor Herzinfarkt, das kann jetzt echt nicht sein.
I said that I'm not far away from getting a heart attack and that this is the worst run of the century. In this run, it took me 12 minutes to make it through the second coal mine fight. Oh, God, man. Normally, it should take around 3 to 4 minutes. Don't forget, I PB'd by 20 minutes in this run. At the end, I finished with a 3:43:37 and I was relieved it was over. After getting that time, I went on trying to get a run done for all the categories, and I have done runs for every difficulty at that point, so New Game Plus was next. On 4th November 2015, I got a 3:29:23 on Grounded New Game Plus. This was technically a world record since it was the first run ever in that category, but Ant's time being lower for Grounded New Game obviously meant my time didn't mean anything. Fun fact, as of now, this is still my PB and the only run I have ever done in that category, and also my oldest PB on the leaderboards. One day I will improve this though. I continued with Survivor New Game Plus, and 2 days later, on 6th November, I got a 3:17:47. Another day later, a 3:09:28 on Hard New Game Plus, and a week later a 3:10:09 on Normal New Game Plus, which were all world records. Finally, I was back to easy mode, and on 20th December 2015 I got a 3:02:53 for Easy New Game Plus. This was not a world record, but I finally had done runs for every difficulty for New Game and New Game Plus. In the meantime, some previous world records have been beaten again already. For example, my very first world record. On 31st January 2016, I went back to grounded mode and got a small PB with a 3:43:07, which a few days later, on 4th February 2016, I improved a lot by getting a 3:29:17. The run obviously still had many time losses, but for some sections you could actually start seeing that it would shape into something that you could call a speedrun. I got a first try downtown fight and was already 2 minutes ahead of PB then, even though I had a death in slums. Sadly, the downtown station strat failed, losing me a minute. The strat back then was terrible. We always had to kill the last clicker next to the ladder, but sometimes it just failed, especially during the time when we used our melee weapon for it instead of a shiv. This run felt like a mirrored run to my PB. The things that went wrong in my PB were good or better in this run, and the things that were good in my PB went badly now. At Doggy Door I got the notorious 3+ signs in a row for Bill. classic. In this run I actually made it through high school and gym first try, saving me over 4 minutes to my PB. Immediately on the next fight, however, I had a funny death.
Oh shit.
Was?
The classic getting pushed against the wall animation. As you can see here, for example, I have always had a good aiming and a good control over the aiming and the weapons in general. Of course, that came from playing the game for 2.5 years now and playing competitive matches in the multiplayer. This stood in stark contrast to what I've been showing you in the last minutes, having multiple deaths in a single fight and big time losses. While it also is the case that playing good in the multiplayer and being a good speedrunner are two different pairs of shoes, it also shows how small our experience was in the single player and in speedrunning back then. In 2016, the multiplayer honestly felt dead already, with Uncharted 4 being around the corner, and it felt like we knew the game inside out. The speedrun, however, was only done regularly by a few people, and throwing this gigantic game at just a handful of runners is the reason why it took way longer for the speedrun to be optimized. Our skills with the controller far exceeded our knowledge of the game. Financial in this run was really good again. The run went on reasonably well, and in university I once again had a funny death by the classic getting pushed against the wall animation.
Wow, ist noch einer. Wow.
Nein. Was?
In Coal Mine I made one of the dumbest mistakes you could ever make. I forgot to shoot the clicker on the stairs after the first fight.
Oh fuck.
Nein, ich hab das vergessen.
The bad thing is, there is no checkpoint in between. You can see the menu saying latest checkpoint 2 minutes ago. What a time loss. The good thing is, I got through the second fight on first try, saving 8 minutes on that fight alone. I had multiple time losses in the next section until the end, but then I finished the run with a 3:29:17, a big PB. After that run, things have changed. I started getting a different view on speedrunning. I started comparing to splits. I learned about GDQ after MadMad and TLoU told me what that is, and the Last of Us mods also changed the entire leaderboard. They separated the main story and Left Behind into 2 games, got rid of all the different difficulties so we'd only have the hardest, grounded, and the easiest, easy difficulties, and on top of that, glitchless runs and glitched runs were separated now. Now we had any percent and glitchless categories. Believe me when I say, from early 2016 onwards, Last of Us speedrunning has changed forever, and anything that has happened prior was just the beginning. For 2 of the main categories, any percent and grounded glitchless, 2016 was a big year for Last of Us speedrunning, reaching some of the biggest milestones to this day. The Last of Us and Uncharted communities have always been pretty close, and in Uncharted, even over 10 years ago, the Uncharted games were known to have insane skips and a huge amount of glitches in their any percent runs, finishing UC1 in less than an hour, airwalking in Uncharted 2, etc. But in Last of Us, it was different. The game itself always had a huge amount of glitches and out of bounds, but nothing that was really groundbreaking for the speedrun. Most of it was just smaller stuff, and on top of that, it seemed like the Last of Us speedrunning community was very different when it came to that topic.
Oh my god.
Until 2016, GDQ became bigger and bigger, with hundreds of thousands of people watching with a high focus on glitches, skips, funny bugs, and mostly any percent runs during their marathons. And meanwhile, the Last of Us community hadn't even separated any percent and glitchless runs until 2016, mainly because no one was using skips anyways, and many within the community thought glitches and skips were cheap, some kind of cheating, and that the game shall not be played that way. You know, all those sentences us speedrunners probably have heard countless of times. However, TLoU UK and MadMad have started shifting that narrative from 2015 onwards. In 2015, TLoU found Downtown Skip, Pittsburgh Skip and Build Strap Skip. These were huge. For Downtown Skip, you would skip the entire downtown building, saving around 4 minutes. Pittsburgh Skip skipped 75% of the Pittsburgh chapter, one of the hardest chapters in game, and also saves around 7 minutes.
Too much. Oh! It's actually not bad. I think Ellie's gonna die here. Holy less than a minute? Did I do it? Restart encounter, please. Yes! Woo! Yes! Woo! Baby! The fucking king! The fucking king!
Bill's trap skip saves 1.5 minutes. While all of these sound huge, and in my opinion they are huge, shout out to Thrill, they couldn't really get much attention within the speedrunning community. Saving 10 minutes in a 3 hours run for many was just not enough to make a big difference, and on top of that, Pittsburgh skip was insanely hard to perform, and Bill's trap skip was super inconsistent at first. At least that was my perception of it back then. So while these skips have been found in 2015, no one has really used them in runs. Some players like Matt and Root have done some glitched runs, but as said, the leaderboards didn't separate between glitched and glitchless runs, and the difficulty for the skips was so high, I sometimes watched Root running with glitches and it would be a successful run when he'd get Pittsburgh skip in less than 5 attempts, while each try loses 1 to 2 minutes. All of that was about to change when the mods changed the leaderboards. In February 2016, I focused on the new category, any % New Game Plus, which is basically the fastest category in this game. Just beat the game as fast as possible and every glitch and skip is allowed. On 15th February 2016, I got a 2:49.07, which was not bad considering Last of Us was known to be a 3 hours long run, and having a run in the 2:40s seemed good. But there have been multiple problems with it. The world record at that point was a 2:46. So my run was still a few minutes behind it, and on top of that, the skips felt weird to me. Downtown skip was fine. That skip came up around 40 minutes into the run, and I could get it fairly often and had a decent control over it. Bill's trap skip, however, felt insanely weird. First, due to lack of technical experience with video games in general, I didn't really understand how that skip worked from a technical perspective, and if I remember correctly, no other runner did either. We had to run over an invisible trigger to unload a door that we would be able to pass then, but the loadings were tight and the movements precise, so in my runs I would basically get there in a run, somehow move back and forth across the triggers and then just pray. In like 90% of my runs it just wouldn't work, so I ended up resetting over and over again, until I eventually could make it through that skip that came up 1 hour into the run. I also failed the skip in this run, and as you could hear, I had some kind of bored disappointment in my voice.
Und hier war eigentlich gerade der Glitch, aber er hat bei mir nicht funktioniert, wie immer.
It felt so random, and even if I should get past that, there was still Pittsburgh skip, which had 2 different versions back then, one lighter version and one harder version. In this run, I went with the harder and faster version, and I actually got it, meaning this run was still a good run actually. With any % and the use of skips being new in Last of Us, some of the skips being super weird and inconsistent and the route not optimized, there was actually one other thing that was special about this run. This run was a world record. Now you might think, what? How? You were over 3 minutes behind the world record. That is correct, and here are my splits after that run, compared to the world record at that time. If you want to improve as a speedrunner, you need to look left and right, look at how other speedrunners play, and try to learn from them too. I watched the world record, the 2:46, and I wanted to check how he did Pittsburgh skip. Before he approached the in-game cutscene before the skip, he restarted the checkpoint. I got surprised by that, because that restart makes no sense from a speedrunning perspective. It loses time to restart there, since it puts Joel further away. I messaged the runner and asked what that was for. He said he restarted there as a game crash prevention, because earlier he got a crash there. For general information, this is actually a good reason, because when Last of Us crashes, very commonly it is on the exact frame when we get a checkpoint. Restarting checkpoints in some places can actually lower the chance of getting a game crash, because the game can delete game cache, unload objects from earlier levels and make room in RAM. So I didn't question his answer. I continued watching, watched that scene again and noticed something. After the checkpoint restart, his photo mode was turned on, but before the checkpoint restart it was turned off. Back then, in order to perform downtown skip, we would always use photo mode so we can see and manage our position, since photo mode gives us visibility while we're out of bounds. So we sometimes turn photo mode on and off. In The Last of Us, there is only one possibility for the game to automatically switch the photo mode from on to off, and that is when you close the game. Automatically switching it from off to on, however, is not a thing. The fact his photo mode went from off to on without us seeing him turning it on meant there must have been a cut. I was 99.9% sure the run must have been spliced. I immediately messaged Thrill because I don't know any other player in the world who has more knowledge about video games than him, especially when it comes to technical things and stuff that happens in the background of a game. He turned on his console and tested it, and his result was the same as mine. The run must have been spliced. Thrill and me, we both weren't mods, so we messaged the runner, who would later admit that he spliced the run. His run got deleted from the leaderboards and the other mods offered me to become a mod. This is the story of how I became a mod for Last of Us on speedrun.com, and after all of that I noticed, oh wait a moment, that means my 2:49 is actually a world record. I had the world record, the fastest completion ever, the entire time without knowing it. 2 weeks later, on 24th February 2016, I got a 2:45.24. To this day, this is one of my proudest achievements ever. This is the first Last of Us speedrun that successfully performed the big 3 skips, Downtown skip, Bill's Trap skip and Pittsburgh skip in a single run, all on first try. For that time I played out of my mind and as a result had a lead to the other runners by multiple minutes. The run had an average start and Downtown skip went fine. What you see here is the weapon switch glitch, also known as crab walk, that softlocks Joel and allows us to keep sprint speed for the duration of the weapon switch. This is not the first run where I used this, but it was implemented around this time. In the meantime, Thrill came up with a consistent setup for Bill's Trap skip, now finally making this run more enjoyable.
Yes! Yes! Holy shit, I did it! Baby!
Back then, I was usually in a PlayStation party with my FN team, just talking and chilling. In Graveyard, we did the floaty Joel glitch, found by Anthony. This one is pretty free. For Pittsburgh skip, Thrill also found a more convenient way of going out of bounds. The previous position we would use was inconsistent, and it was hard to see where we should place the plank. I got out of bounds and continued with the skip. After setting up Joel's position for 15 seconds, I finally started diving. At first, I thought I actually failed the skip.
Schon wieder nicht, oder? Es ist wieder so wie eben.
Ja, ich weiß, was vorhin passiert ist.
Nein, ich schaff's.
Doch, ich hab's geschafft. Yes.
I have to say this. We didn't know it back then, but this skip behaves differently in runs compared to practice. Camera angles can be different, with sometimes the camera fading out, which is the reason why I got confused here. After pause buffering, I actually hit the checkpoint. I was very happy and the run could continue. I even mentioned that my hands are shaking.
Ich hab so Zittergänge, jetzt kommt erstmal die, direkt jetzt hier nach, ne?
I was on the best run now I have had so far in those 6 months and I had 1.5 hours left to go. In sewers, I got grabbed by a stalker, which ended in a complete disaster, wasting me over 40 seconds. However, the run was still on. I entered Tommy's Dam after 1 hour and 37 minutes, which was 20 minutes faster than my first world record and 3 minutes ahead of my PB. The following fights went on as expected and after 2 hours into the run, I finally approached the infamous deer shot. This time, however,
Erster Versuch getroffen.
I got it first try. All skips and the deer shot on first try. This run was on fire. Back then, we didn't know you could kill the bloater with one shot to the foot, so we actually placed 3 bombs. This would be enough to one hit kill the bloater too. Then I lost around 20 seconds to a triangle prompt not appearing. In tunnel we would actually go loud and throw and shoot everything we can. After this run I actually wanted to try something else. After having done speedruns for half a year now, I started looking left and right and noticed different speedrunning communities on Twitch. That's how Kingdom Hearts speedruns gained my attention, and I always loved Kingdom Hearts, so I wanted to give it a try. I was super bad and had no clue what I was doing, but on 5th March 2016 I got a 35018 for the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix Any % Beginner PS3 category, which was 122nd place even back then. 2 weeks later I improved this time by a lot and got a 32628, and another 2 weeks later I got a 32236. After achieving the 24524 for Any % New Game Plus in Last of Us, and after doing some Kingdom Hearts runs, I was done with Any % for now and went back to Grounded. On 7th April 2016 I got a 31956, which was still far behind Ant's time, which was a 31112. By the way, whenever there were months where I haven't done any speedruns, that usually means I was busy with playing factions. This was also the first time I had splits on screen, and I started streaming with my capture card instead of the PS4. I had a capture card since 2013, but I never used it for streaming. It sounds stupid and is a bit complicated, but the reality is that I only started streaming my speedruns because of Twitch's function of saving VODs. That was the best way for me to save my speedruns. I didn't care about having viewers or anything streaming related. I also wanted to stay in the PS4 party with my team during the runs, which wouldn't be possible when streaming from my PC because I only owned one internet cable, so if I wanted to use it for my PC, I didn't have one for my PS4, and the problem was that my PS4 had the bug where the wireless connection doesn't work. My entire setup was a catastrophe, and when I used my headphones on my PS4, there also was no game sound on the capture card, which means I was sometimes streaming speedruns without any game sound, or without any sound actually. The run started really strong again, but in downtown I had one of the craziest deaths that I have ever witnessed in my entire life. This wasted 30 seconds. However, I continued the run. This time I made it through the station on first try and therefore still saved 30 seconds, having a lead of over a minute already. In Capital I made a movement mistake that killed me, but it was also still better than in my PB. In Bill's Trap I got the glitch where I shot the runner but it didn't get stunned by the shot, losing me a minute. Doggy Door was once again not good, but at least I didn't get 3 plus signs. I ended up with a 2-minute lead entering high school. For high school we see something new now. Around that time I found out that restarting the checkpoint after the fight gives us all our items back. Everything we have used during the fight, molotovs, bombs, shotgun shells, etc. would be given back to us after all the enemies were dead. This is exclusive to Grounded difficulty and must have been an oversight since Grounded only came out almost a year after the game's initial release. It turned out there are some other spots where this is also the case, but this one in high school is the most helpful one, because now we basically exchanged the slowest and most inconsistent strat with a super fast and consistent strat, since we could just use everything we want. The reason this was allowed for glitchless runs is because when you die, the game restarts the checkpoint, meaning if we would ban restarting the checkpoint, we would ban dying. That on the hardest difficulty didn't seem like a good idea. Also, there is a black screen glitch in Science Building that gives us our items back too, and to this day, even after 10 years, it is still unsolved what causes that glitch. I golded high school by 30 seconds and also didn't die in truck push this time, so I entered Pittsburgh with a minus 337. I lost time when an enemy decided to glitch through an object to push me against the wall. The run continued to save time in places that didn't go well in my PB and lose time in other places. I also saved some time with other new things that were found, for example with new restart checkpoints. Especially back then we would find new things quite often. In the first sewers fight something really bad happened. I wanted to restart the fight because my shot with the shorty didn't kill the enemy, but the game actually gave me a 1.5 minute load screen. The load times for restart checkpoints usually were consistent, especially for the ones that were planned, but when dying or restarting on a frame you hit a checkpoint on PS4, the game could give you these long load times. I lost way over 2 minutes in sewers. I also had 5 deaths in the upcoming sniper area. First to movement mistakes, then to bad luck. The run went downhill, but I still somehow managed to be 2 minutes ahead entering Tommy's Dam. I continued on, playing pretty well, hit the deer first try and went into winter with a 4-minute lead. I didn't forget about the clicker this time and saved 2 minutes in coal mine. I had a few deaths in the following alley sections, but nothing too bad, and there was also a faster strat for the last cycle of the David fight, which saved me lots of time. So despite some deaths, I still continued saving more and more time and ended the run with a 3:19.56, my first sub 320 and a 9 minute and 20 second PB. 2 weeks later, on 23rd April 2016, I got a 3:15.43, finally getting a bit closer on grounded now. The beginning was alright, and in downtown I saved time to not getting launched out of the map and to new strats, for example a new downtown fight strat. I was already 1 minute ahead after downtown. The first hour was actually very clean. I played well and everything went according to plan, so I was 3 minutes ahead already entering graveyard. And also for Pittsburgh it just continued to go well. This run was almost godlike, too good to be true. I just checked and didn't know it back then, but after Financial District I was actually almost 2.5 minutes ahead of Ant's PB. Some mistakes happened in Searchlight, but remember the long load screen I got during Sewers? In this run, Sewers went way better and I left Sewers being almost 7 minutes ahead of PB and still being 2 minutes ahead of Ant. Unfortunately, I had 4 deaths again in the sniper fight. It went out of control again. Everything came together there. Watching this back, I lacked some knowledge about where I can move and where I can't, and also this fight becomes more and more inconsistent the more you restart the checkpoint. Since this was bad in my PB too, I didn't lose any time to it, but I lost time to Ant and now was only ahead of him by around 45 seconds. In Science Building something really unfortunate happened. Ellie got a plus sign when I was on the stairs. The funny thing is, this was actually a blessing, but I didn't know it back then. When Ellie gets a plus sign, no further enemies will spawn in as long as the plus sign is up, meaning I could have just ran through and end the fight, saving quite some time. I didn't know you could do that and stood there with my flamethrower, already pre-firing. This caused the plus sign to fully fill in, which results in a death, losing me 45 seconds. Ant and me were basically tied heading into winter, and we both hit the deer first try. So what could happen during the final stretch that would cause me to finish my run over 4 minutes slower than him? The end of winter completely trolled me. The enemies in the alley escape section were completely out of position. David turned around when I was behind him, which should never ever happen, and the final 3 enemies were out of position too and killed me. Twice. I lost over 2.5 minutes to that. I also didn't get alerted on top floor and hospital, which means the enemies are all out of position, so I died and lost another 1.5 minutes, finishing the run in 3:15.43. After running such a long category then, I actually did the exact opposite. In May 2016, I have done my first left behind any percent runs, which at that point were already less than 7 minutes long. The world record was a 6:44 by Matt. On my first run I got a 6:52. On the next day I improved my time twice, getting a 6:45 and then a 6:38, which was a new world record. The day after I wanted to do the same, just for the PS3 version. The left behind PS3 and PS4 runs were only different in that way that the route for the skip was just a little different, and obviously the FPS difference. What I struggled with the most was that on PS3 you can't swap the buttons. When Last of Us came out on PS4, I started aiming and shooting with L2 R2, because I thought that was the future. This really hurt me when I ran PS3 then. Sometimes you just see me aiming when I actually wanted to sprint and vice versa. The world record at that time was a 6:03 by Matt, and on my first run I got a 6:04. I basically ran this category for the entire day and improved my time 2 more times. First I got a 6-minute flat and then a 5:45, which set a new world record and I was happy with it. After a short break, I continued with Grounded, and on 5th July 2016 I got a 3:14.24 and improved his time too, and the world record at that time was a 3:05.16. This run once again made use of new strats found, for example this restart checkpoint I found here, which saves 20 seconds. In Downtown Station, the last clicker didn't spawn in for me. It was known that this could happen, but it was a rare thing that was thought to be a bug or a glitch or something. We should remember this. For now, it saved me a few seconds. The run was really good again, entering Pittsburgh only a few seconds behind Ants 305, which was overall over 10 minutes faster than my PB. Until I burned myself in the first Pittsburgh fight and had to restart checkpoint. I made a few mistakes and I had a bad financial, so I fell behind. Then the run really didn't continue well. I had 3 deaths in Searchlight, Sewers was a bit slow, and I also couldn't get through the sniper fight on first try. However, since this was bad in my PB too, I was only slightly behind. I gained the lead back heading into winter, and coal mine was actually so good that I saved a minute on it alone. I unfortunately lost lots of time in the lodge and in the rest of the fights in winter again. Fights and sections I seemed to always lose time to. At that time I just couldn't get through these sections without anything weird happening. I remember for a long time I had no PB on grounded that would just get through the end of winter normally. It was annoying. The only good thing is that in this run it was a little bit less of a disaster, so I still saved time compared to my PB. In tunnel I somehow got alerted and actually fell into the reds. Only because my PB had a death in hospital I managed to finish this run as a PB, getting a 3:14:24. On 24th July 2016 I got a 3:10:38, getting closer to the sub 3:10 barrier. In early 2016 we always said that a sub 3 on grounded is impossible, and for a long time declared a sub 3:10 as the ultimate goal to achieve on grounded, which was also my goal at that time. The first half of the run was okay. I lost some time to the clicker now being there again in the Downtown Station fight, and I also got unlucky in Graveyard and Doggy Door, but it was still alright. The Pittsburgh chapter was way better now, until Searchlight went terrible again, but I had a funny death in there.
Was? Was? Was?
Sewers was a bit weird again, but it went still better than in my PB, and this time I actually had a good sniper fight, saving me 48 seconds, entering Tommy's Dam being almost 2 minutes ahead. Coal mine was a bit slow and I once again entered the sections that never went right for me. I got shot and killed instantly, even dying at the very end of the section, being still ahead of PB, but another run where all of this goes wrong. Back then, during my first 2 years of speedrunning, I could get really mad or even salty. This is how I felt after that death.
RIP, ihr Hurensöhne, fickt euch. Ohne Spaß, ne? Ich mach sowas eigentlich nicht, aber fickt eure Mütter, Alter. Aber richtig heftig, Mann. Das ist lächerlich.
The funny thing is, I still saved almost 1.5 minutes while having multiple deaths. Ridiculous. I was pretty nervous towards the end of the run. Tunnel worked well this time, and I entered hospital with a 5-minute lead, on my way for my first sub 3:10. But I once again didn't get alerted on top floor in hospital. The enemies were out of position again and I didn't know how to react, so I died. This time I was so disappointed that I said this.
Ich werde das Spiel nie wieder Speedrun, ich schwöre, Mann.
Hospital lost me 1.5 minutes and I finished the run with a 3:10:38. Just a few days later, on 29th July 2016, after running the game for 1 year and after grinding down my grounded time a lot, I finally achieved a sub 3:10 by getting a 3:08:58. That was a big milestone for me, especially since Ant's world record was still a 3:05, so I came closer and closer. The beginning was okay, and in downtown station, Tess almost killed my run. Just a few seconds later, however, I actually died and the run had a bad beginning. I had a pretty good Bills town in this run, so I was ahead again entering Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had a few hiccups with some missed headshots, missing the Molotov in financial and a missed arrow, but I held the pace and it was still okay. Honorable mention to the old searchlight strat where we just stood here and waited for the enemies to hop down. In the bar fight I had a funny death then.
Was?
I wasted lots of time, but I was almost a minute ahead entering sewers, just because of how bad it was in my PB. Sewers and Sniper once again went badly, both having a death, and while Tommy's Dam was fine, it went downhill again in Science Building with 2 deaths. I entered Winter being almost 30 seconds behind and then missed the deer twice. It really didn't look good. Coal Mine was terrible too, with the Molotov not killing the clicker, me missing some shots, and then heavily relying on melee combat and the help of David. I was over a minute behind my PB at this point and said that I can't PB this. I finally had a somewhat normal lodge fight, which in retrospect I can say happened because I got a bad enemy pattern that ended up alerting me, but an alert here is actually necessary for the lodge fight to go well. I didn't know that back then. The next alley fight went badly again, but altogether it was still way better than in my PB, so I saved lots of time and then said this.
What's up, guys? I'm back.
My PB had that death in hospital, so in this run, I entered hospital being a few seconds ahead, fully knowing that if I don't die now, I will actually get my first sub 310 and a big PB. Grounded was something different back then. We were very few runners and our strats compared to today were so unoptimized and risky. That resulted in RNG being way higher than today. Runs were way more luck based and that made our strats sketchy. For example, in this last fight of the game, in hospital, we basically had nothing left in our inventory, meaning we picked up a brick, took a last prayer and tried to run through, which almost killed me in this run. I somehow made it through and therefore my reaction to the sub 310 was rather intense.
Yes! Oh mein Gott, meine Hände zittern so krass, Alter. Geist! Yes, Alter! Yes, 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 yes.
After reaching my goal for Grounded, I came back to Kingdom Hearts for a few days. I practiced a bit and I was able to improve my time from April twice. First getting a 3:15:16 and a day later a 3:11:40. After that I came back to Grounded and on 23rd September 2016 I improved again and got a 3:06:47. Watching this run you'll notice many changes since my last PB. There were a few new strats in slums and remember when I mentioned the clicker in downtown station that would sometimes just not be there? I found out why that happens and also came up with a strat to make this work every time, saving us a few seconds and a heart attack. Also, this is not a glitch or a despawn. This is an intended game mechanic where, after getting alerted, the game stops spawning in enemies. I think it's a difficulty scaling to not make 20 clickers run at you. So now it was implemented into the strat to get into a semi-alerted state where the clickers hear and react to us, but don't fully alert us. This makes the last clicker not spawn in. Fun fact, this strat a decade later also found its use in The Last of Us Remake, and there are also a few more fights in the game where you can prevent spawns like that. For example in Truck Push, where the clicker spawns a few milliseconds earlier than the 3 runners, and if we shoot it right away, the 3 runners won't spawn in. The run was pretty solid and even Sewers and Sniper were fine, so I entered Tommy's Dam almost being 2 minutes ahead. At this time I didn't die in Science Building and Coal Mine was good too. I was almost 4.5 minutes ahead of my PB and basically tied to world record. I got a really rare and bad pattern in the alley escape fight, a pattern that back then we had no backup strat for. This wasted me 1 minute. Lodge was a disaster again, wasting me another minute. At least I didn't die in the next alley fight. Feels like the first time in forever. I was 3 minutes ahead when I entered the final fights. Tunnel didn't work. I got alerted by the clickers and ended the run with a 3:06:47. It appears I was streaming this run, but I was muted for the entire run. I unmuted myself after the run and talked about it.
306 is... okay, 47 is a very good time. But I lost 50 seconds at bus depot because I threw the bottle too far away, so the clicker wasn't alerted.
In the next few days, Ant and me both improved our times again. Ant getting a 3:04:43 and me getting a 3:06:19. This run was similar to my previous PB, only that it had an absolute terrible mid-game but a decent winter which made up for it. Another 2 days later, on 30th September 2016, I got a 3:06:08 and this run was special. The run was really good. I was 2.5 minutes ahead of PB after financial and basically tied to world record. I died 5 times at the tank, lost 1.5 minutes and also died at the end of the searchlight fight, making me lose all my lead. The next chapters were all pretty good, even getting a sniper gold, so I then entered winter with a 50-second lead to my PB. I hit the deer first try and got my best winter so far, golding some splits and being over 1.5 minutes ahead. The thing is, Ant's run was way ahead still, since I had multiple deaths in mid-game, but he actually died at the end in hospital. You can see here that I'm 1 second ahead of him at the beginning of the very last section now. Remember when I was talking about how risky and unoptimized our strats were back then? I was 1 second ahead of Ant now, entering the final fight. Will this be the day when, for the first time ever, someone is going to beat Ant's grounded time? For the hospital top floor, it was very important, indispensable, to get alerted when running across this room. Only when getting alerted and shot at, the enemies move into their correct positions, making our strat work. We would always just run across without knowing why or when it works. But the good thing was, in 95% of the runs, it just worked and we could follow our strat. The bad thing, this run is among the 5%. So I entered hospital top floor ahead of world record and didn't get alerted. All the enemies were out of position. I didn't know what to do. I also knew I'd lose world record pace now and died. And died the same, by the way. A death like that in hospital wastes around 1.5 minutes, since it puts you back to the very beginning of the fight to the bottom floor, since grounded mode has less checkpoints than the other difficulties. The run ended up being 1 minute and 25 seconds behind world record. After this grounded grind, I went back to Left Behind for 2 days. My world records from earlier that year have been beaten, so I wanted to get them back. The any% PS4 world record was a 5:48 by Matt, which he got 1 day earlier. On 4th October 2016, I first got a 6:13, then a 5:55 and finally a 5:41, beating the world record. The next day I was doing the other Left Behind categories and got a 5:41 for any% PS3, a 32 flat, 30:55 and 30:43 for glitchless, and then a 31:47 for all collectibles, holding all world records in Left Behind now. On 7th October 2016, MadMad, Thrill UK and me were sitting together doing Uncharted 2 co-op runs. This was lots of fun actually. Not only because of the vibe between us, but grinding down our time had something really satisfying. We were running the level, the Sanctuary, and while at first we started more or less improvising the run, from hour to hour we played more and more experienced and also found interesting strats, like a death warp for example. We also didn't know what time we would get until right at the end screen popped up, and seeing the good time popping up like that and then celebrate that in a group was really cool. Then, speaking of Uncharted, a week after that I have ran Uncharted 1 for the first time. I struggled a bit with the wall clipping, which in retrospect was because of my bad finger position, but I got a 58:53 on my first run and then a 51:57 2 days later. After the change of the leaderboards in Last of Us, the categories received new rules and some runs that didn't use any of the big skips but used some smaller glitches still got shifted to the any% category. Therefore, the glitchless world record was really bad and obsolete and I basically wanted to redo every category again. On 20th October 2016, I got a 3:01:25 while the world record technically was a 3:30:42. The week after that, I once again came back to Kingdom Hearts. This time I practiced a bit more serious than before and as a result improved a lot. I first got a 3:05:50, then a 3:02:59, and then on 11th November 2016 I got a 2:59:45, my first sub 3. This was still nowhere near the world record times, not even close, but I was happy with this, and this was actually my final Kingdom Hearts run. Since then I have never ran this game anymore. In the meantime, Ant has beaten my Left Behind any percent PS4 time with a 5:34.9. So during Christmas 2016 I tried to beat it again. I first improved my PB twice with a 5:37 and a 5:36, and then beat the world record with a 5:34.72. And then got a 5:33.4, claiming back world record again. But on 28th December I got a 5:30.38, which was a really good run, which then stayed the world record for now. In 2017, a fairly competitive battle for the any percent crown has begun, and while I was playing the other categories, Matt grinded down any percent New Game Plus and got a 240.57. There were some new things, for example a few more weapon switches, a trick for the plank before Bill's trap to pick it up sooner, and Matt also randomly found a new trick during the run, getting ahead of David after the first coal mine fight.
What the fuck? How the fuck did I get it? What? The fuck happened to David?
You don't need to worry about
What's he doing? How did I do that? That was PogChamp. What the fuck did I just do?
On 12th January 2017 I got a 240.09, claiming back world record. One day later I've done an any percent run. Any percent new game was, and basically still is, pretty unpopular. Our perception of any percent was that it is basically any percent New Game Plus, just with worse weapons and some strats being more annoying. Any percent New Game Plus was also the faster category, so we usually only ran any percent after an any percent New Game Plus grind, to at least get a somewhat updated time there too. Matt also held the world record here with a 248.53, and on 13th January 2017 I got a 245. As I said, I wanted to go through each category again, so after my any percent runs I continued with glitchless New Game Plus. At that point Ant held the world record with a 254.45, and on 15th January 2017 I beat it by 23 seconds and got a 254.22. After the leaderboard changes, for some time, we actually had a category for grounded any percent runs. I only ran this once to get a time on the boards for each category, but my time of a 251.14 for grounded any percent New Game Plus that I got on 16th January 2017 wasn't that bad actually. The run, however, that was really bad was the 3:07.10 for grounded any percent that I got one day later. I didn't really have strats or a route and just tried to use my knowledge of any percent and grounded runs and try to combine it. During the run I noticed that for Pittsburgh skip I used the oxygen bar as a visual cue to know how long I'd need to swim. However, on grounded, the heads up display is disabled, so my visual cue was gone. I hadn't practiced that beforehand and then failed the skip multiple times. At that time Kingdom Hearts 0.2 released, so on 6th February I have done one run of the game, getting a 26.51. I will not talk further about this game, sorry Arams. Back to Last of Us. Remember when I said that in 2016 we've reached multiple milestones? Well, my personal milestone was the first run that successfully performed all known skips on first try. In late 2016, Ant got the first sub 3 completion on grounded with a 259.46. In February 2017, I returned to grounded runs and got a 3:04.57. In late 2016, Naughty Dog unfortunately released a PS4 Pro patch for the game that completely messed up enemy AI in some areas of the game. This messed with multiple of our strats, and therefore from that point onward we started playing the unpatched version of the game whenever we ran grounded. The run implemented a few new things, like a new searchlight strat that was faster and gave us more control over the fight, spawn trapping the enemies jumping down. I think it was found by Soviet Jedi. And we also stopped picking up the flamethrower and instead used a Molotov for the infected, and also learned that we can kill the bloater and coal mine with a single rifle shot, but this run was more or less like my PB, just without the death in hospital. There was one interesting thing though. 2 days before my run, and for the first time ever, got the truck push trick where the truck moves on its own. This happens when Joel and Bill let go of the truck in the exact same moment, and it is very helpful since it saves ammo, around 20 seconds, and gets rid of any potential RNG. We don't know if it's a frame perfect trick, but if it isn't, then it's definitely close. It was a funny coincidence that Ant and me both got this at the same time.
Okay, normally I don't use that much ammo. Oh, the cars. What the fuck? I have the same...
In this run, I once again didn't get alerted in hospital and died. Fun fact, after that I actually found a consistent strat for this. I found out that running to the left of this pillar slows us down a tiny bit, guaranteeing an alert. Since then, in the last 8.5 years, there hasn't been a single run anymore where we wouldn't get alerted, meaning this was the last run that died like that. Less than 24 hours later, on 11th February 2017, I got a 3:01:28, getting closer to a sub 3. This run was really nice actually. Of course, not a world record and some sections still went wrong, but this was a huge PB and finally there was no section of the game where the run totally imploded. My reaction in hospital was also nice.
I will do it like this. And now my camera like this. See, they shot me. I will wait. Yes! 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 What did I tell you? I will find a strat, a consistent strat. Oh man. Yes!
On 21st March 2017, I've done a few left behind attempts again and improved my any % PS4 time by getting a 5:29. After that, I actually took a break for around 3 months. As I've mentioned before, my focus was still on Factions esports matches, and I always viewed speedrunning as my side activity. From March to June 2017, I was very busy with the project I've done back then. From 14th May till 14th June, I wanted to upload one edited competitive match a day, finishing it with my final FN montage that would get released on 14th June 2017, Last of Us's 4th anniversary. I ended up uploading well over 40 videos within 1 month, and the montage I've uploaded took so much time, I've spent the entire month basically just editing videos. Finally, after that, in July I returned to speedrunning. I first came back to Left Behind glitchless runs and held the world record with a 29:49, and I first got a 29:54 and then a 29:38. A few days later I also got the world record for Left Behind all collectibles with a 30:50. For the main game there was one category that also got changed with the leaderboards that I haven't ran again yet. All collectibles. The world record was a 3:51:30 and on 31st July 2017 I got a 3:23:15. This run was on the boards for quite a while until someone, I forgot who it was, noticed that I missed a collectible during the run. It sounds weird, but I just didn't know that you need to delete the in-game profile before the run in order for the game to count the collectibles correctly. That means in this run, I missed a collectible, but the game still showed 141 out of 141 collectibles. In this run, I also started using the new tunnel strat, where we use a single smoke bomb to get through the fight. There were times where we killed every enemy here on easy mode, and times where we were using stealth strats on grounded, but from now on, every category uses the same smoke bomb strat here. At first it was a bit inconsistent, but it worked during this run. On the same day, I then did a glitchless run to get back the world record that was taken in the meantime. I got a 2:58:33. During my break, and got the world record back for glitchless New Game Plus, so in the next few days I tried to get it back. On 3rd August 2017, I got a 2:53:11, missing world record by only 3 seconds. Then, in summer 2017, any % New Game Plus entered what was probably the most competitive time that category has seen to this date. Matt, Catalyst, who later becomes a well-known Dark Souls runner, and me all grinded down our any % New Game Plus times, finally pushing this category a bit more. And has also ran any % New Game Plus for the first time, and all 4 of us actually owned the world record at least once during that time period. In August 2017, the any % leaderboards looked like this. 3rd place Anthony Caliber with a 2:37:11, which was a world record. 2nd place Matt with a 2:36:53, which was also a world record. And 1st place Catalyst with a 2:35:57. I wasn't even in the top 3 anymore. I returned, and on 13th August 2017, I PB'd by almost 5 minutes with a 2:35:18. PBing by that much was possible because of all the different stuff that has been found in the meantime and across the categories. New restart checkpoints, new strats for the fights, movement optimizations, better routing, and making a more efficient use of throwables, etc. Of course, from year to year, we also improved our gameplay, just playing better in general and gaining more knowledge of the game. It was a really fun time back then and I enjoyed watching the others' streams. I would watch Kata's stream as often as I could. During the short time when he ran Last of Us, he was really streaming it a lot. From around 2016 until 2019, occasionally I did some offline runs. Sometimes I just didn't feel like streaming or people watching me play. So this run was also done offline. The run had an amazing early game, hitting all the shots fast and also with good patterns. I even hit tricks no one else was really going for example this dumpster trick, where you can make the dumpster move on its own when pressing triangle in the right moment. So when I entered chapter 3, after 28 minutes I was already over 20 seconds ahead of world record. We also stopped using photo mode for a downtown skip. This wasn't because we had to play riskier, but because a better setup has been found and our comfort with it was high enough to not use photo mode anymore. In Capital I also managed to get the next dumpster trick too. When Matt got the first sub 240 earlier that year, he also implemented a new skip to this game. At the end of the Capital chapter, you can clip out of bounds with the pallet and swim into the cutscene trigger that starts the Bill's Town chapter. While this, in my opinion, is a really cool skip since it cuts the waiting time, making this run more fluent, this skip sadly only saves around 10 seconds. I added the plank trick to my run and later lost over a minute at the tank. The strat just didn't work and I died 4 times. The run fell apart there and the next fights also didn't go well. In Searchlight I found a way to skip the little in-game cutscene where Joel falls down. Shooting the propane tank from a distance by ourselves takes the chance away from the tank to stagger us with it and therefore we can just continue running. I entered Tommy's Dam with a 1:31, only being 12 seconds behind world record. I hit the deer first try, got good fights, also implemented Matt's way of getting ahead of David, and after coal mine I was ahead of world record again by a few seconds. At that time, and also randomly found a new glitch during his stream that allows us to keep the clicker in the tunnel alive while still going for the triangle prompt. The clicker doesn't attack us, we can just go on, but the game thinks we're in combat and therefore gives us sprint speed, saving at least 30 seconds. I finished the run with a 2:35.18 and got the world record. The run had a bad mid-game and I knew I would go for a 2:33 eventually. The next day I went back to Glitchless New Game Plus to try to get the world record that I've barely missed the days before. On 14th August 2017 I got a 2:52.24. On that day, Catalyst actually improved his time for any percent New Game Plus and got a 2:34.58, the first 2:34. I instantly came back to this category and immediately on the next day, on 16th August 2017, I got a 2:34.12, gaining some lead on the others. This run was pretty similar to my previous PB, just without the huge time loss at the tank. After that, I once again came back to Grounded, leaving the other categories behind again. In the meantime, Ant improved his time a lot, his PB being a 2:56.19, improving his time multiple times after getting the first sub 3. On 22nd August 2017 I got a 3:00.28. Until this time I would usually get a Grounded PB, then do other things, and the next time I would come back to Grounded, a PB was basically free since it has been months since I've last ran it. The same goes for this time I came back to Grounded, just that now I wanted to grind my time a bit lower before I eventually play other categories again. So 2 days later, after honestly struggling a bit to get a sub 3, I got it. a 2:59.44. With this, I was the second person to achieve a sub 3 run on grounded. Also, my grounded PBs have always been a bit behind Ant's times, but I should mention that I was very deep into finding strats in Last of Us. Even until that point in 2017, I found an insane amount of strats and stuff in this game, making times like this possible. The first 2 hours of this run were really good. I was almost 3 minutes ahead of my PB. I lost some time here and there, but nothing too bad honestly. Then I died in hospital again. This time not because of a missing alert though. I don't know, it just seemed cursed. Whatever, my first sub 3 was achieved and I was happy. Getting a sub 3 was a big confidence boost for me and a huge barrier being broken. As I said, I wanted to go further this time, and only 3 days later, on 27th August 2017, I PB'd by almost 2 minutes and got a 2:57.53. While still being 1.5 minutes behind Ant's time, at that point 3rd place was actually a 3:10.19. So while Ant and me were the only 2 sub 3 runners, no other player has even managed to get a sub 3:10 on grounded yet, and yes, Last of Us has never been the game with hundreds of speedrunners grinding down their times, but there definitely were people speedrunning Last of Us daily or weekly, and with Ant gaining more and more popularity, becoming a Twitch partner in late 2016, Grounded always attracted the most viewers and had a decent amount of players. The run for the most part was similar to my PB again, just without the death in hospital. A week later I got a very special run. Slums was a bit rough, but early game was still fine, entering Billstown with a 49.23, around tied to world record. Billstown wasn't that good honestly, but I actually left Billstown being ahead of world record. I continued playing well and the run was looking really good. I entered Tommy's Dam with a 150, still slightly ahead of world record. Then in Dam fight and Forest fight I lost quite some time. I missed a shot but also wanted to play it a bit safe. This caused me to lose around 15 seconds and I fell behind Ant for the first time since entering Billstown. Entering winter I failed the hardest test of a speedrunner's mentality and missed the deer, losing me another 18 seconds, being almost 30 seconds behind Ant now. Coal mine was actually 30 seconds faster than in my PB, but I still played it safe, and after coal mine I was over 40 seconds behind Ant. My late games usually have always been pretty strong, and I got a really good one in this run, saving 20 seconds on Ant, only being 20 seconds behind him now. Also, this means I was 1.5 minutes ahead of my PB. In between this run and my previous PB, I found a way to make the tunnel strat infinitely more consistent by climbing up here in the middle of the area, which makes Ellie climb here too, which then gets rid of the chance of Ellie getting grabbed. So the tunnel fight wasn't a problem and I made it through. But I actually threw the world record away here in tunnel. Technically there was no point in late game where I was ahead of world record, but my run ended with a 2:56.27, which was only 8 seconds behind world record, and at the end of tunnel this happened. I lost 9 seconds because of a movement mistake. I must have messed up my X and circle inputs while diving, making Joel get stuck underwater. This is pretty rare and only worked because this specific spot can glitch out a little. Sad, but honestly my fault. Maybe fate, who knows. Whatever, it seemed like I had some momentum on that current grind, and on 5th September 2017 I managed to get a 2:56.27. I think I jump scared Ant with that time. After this grounded grind and another break, I switched categories again, because while I was playing grounded for a while, Catalyst actually continued grinding any % New Game Plus, and in the meantime he broke the 234 barrier, getting a 233.52. On 16th November 2017, I got a 233.43. At this time, any % New Game Plus still basically only featured the 3 big skips that we've seen earlier. There were a few more any % tricks, like a few more weapon switches for example.
Whoa, I got it. I got the weapon switch trick. I should save time now.
But most of the time save over the past months came from implementing the newest strats that were not exclusive to this category. This run was actually very good, like really good. But in tunnel I failed the clicker trick. At first I thought that's not a problem and that I might just waste a few seconds, until I noticed failing this trick loses around 30 seconds. However, that time still felt pretty good, and unfortunately that was the end of our competitive summer grind. MadMad took a break, and Catalyst since then has never done a single Last of Us run anymore. He's still a speedrunner, since then focusing on Dark Souls and later Elden Ring runs, also having big success there. But for now, the Last of Us Summer 2017 competition was over. During the last few months, my Left Behind times got beaten again, and the Left Behind any % PS4 world record was a 5:27.86 by Ant. On 21st November 2017, I got a 5:25.8. In 2017, I put an SSD into my PS4, and while I already had it during my latest any % runs, it was not noticeable since it would only save a few seconds in a 2.5 hours long run. However, for Left Behind, a short run that also heavily depended on the load times from the skip, it was very noticeable. The SSD saved like 2 to 3 seconds or so, but this resulted in me having a slightly slower final fight than Ant, but still getting the world record. People were mad. I remember Ant showing his and my PB side by side on stream, where the difference became really noticeable. I received multiple messages by people and they were ranting on stream. I have to say that I didn't give a shit about people thinking this was unfair, because you could continue this discussion forever. Having a better monitor than others, unfair. PS4 Pro came out at that time, so having a PS4 Pro, unfair. Also, I was very transparent with it even before people got mad. I even wrote SSD in the run description, so people who watch it can see it immediately. And lastly, I didn't buy the SSD just to get that left behind world record. Fun fact, I later ran any percent PS3 again and got a final fight that felt insanely good. But then I noticed the time was still way slower than Ant's time. I compared the load times and it turned out that his load times were about 5 seconds faster than mine. I investigated and it turned out I had a slower PS3 than him. I had a PS3 Slim and Ant always had a PS3 Super Slim. I stopped caring and deleted the run I just got, which actually was a PB with a 520 something, and since then I've never ran left behind PS3 again, so my PB you can see nowadays on the leaderboards isn't my actual PB. Whatever, that topic was off the table very quickly and there's no bad blood between any of us. So I wanted to move on too, but first I did the occasional any percent run to update the time a bit and got a 2:36:42. On the same day, during the same stream, I've done an all collectibles run to update my time there too, since my previous run has gotten rejected now. I got a 3:28:42. This category was very unoptimized, with no one properly routing it. We would always just end up with way too many items, just picking up the collectibles and improving the rest with our knowledge from the other categories. It also stayed that way until years later. Back to Left Behind, my all collectibles time got beaten too, so 2 days later I got a 29:51, claiming world record back. Here I have to mention that this was my last run in this category, and in 2022 the rules for this category got changed, since it turned out that we were always missing one collectible. Basically the entire category got reset, more or less, which is why I don't have any runs in this category anymore. In the following days I did a few glitchless runs to improve my time, which I did 3 times. First I got a 29:37, then a 29:32, and finally a 29:20, which were all world records. This 29:20 is still my PB, and since then I haven't done any runs in this category anymore. I will run this again though, one day. Those were the first 2.5 years of my speedrunning career, and from here on onwards things got out of hand and also a bit dark. 2018, at least for me, when it came to speedrunning, the speedruns itself and my real life, must have been the worst year out of those 10 years. It was a tragedy. To properly explain it, I have to dive a bit into my personal life. This story will also be important for a later part of the video. I've had some traumatic experiences in my childhood, but I always somehow managed to push through. However, when I was 17 years old, actually right after Last of Us release, my real life started becoming terrible. My grandpa became really sick, I stopped caring about school, eventually failing that school year, and everyone in my family started being hostile against each other, with the entire family falling apart. I also isolated myself a bit from friends because at that age they all just wanted to drink alcohol and party, something I never liked. I accept it, but it's not for me. On top of that, the things from my childhood caught up and it was all too much. I started getting panic attacks, anxiety. My mental health was at a low. I wasn't really eating or drinking. I felt sick and dizzy every day and I couldn't do anything besides staying in my room. Not gonna lie, during the first weeks I barely made it to the bathroom. I lost weight and was underweight then. I lost all my social contacts. I didn't go to school for 2 months. By the way, during that time I've uploaded my first video to this channel, and even after that I was just suffering in school. I was just enduring until the time was over. I also started psychotherapy right when this began. The result of this was that I put my heart and soul, my entire life and until today over 10,000 hours into The Last of Us. You know why I'm telling you all this from 2013, 2014 when we're actually looking at my runs from 2018 now? It's because in 2018 it became even worse. In 2014, even with so much pain, I still kinda pushed through and managed to just do something. I finished school with the highest school leaving examination in Germany, and fought myself back a bit, but in early 2018 I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. This was game over for me. Even after all those years, this was the first time in my life I felt too bad to even play video games anymore. I lost the last thing in life I was having fun with. Anxiety reached its peak, and in 2018 I've spent 3 months in a psychiatry. For this 10 years video, this means there were almost no speedruns I've done in 2018. During the first months of 2018 I spent the time playing some public matches in factions to reach level 999. I was able again to play games, but because I had to set up and get used to the injections, it was pretty unrealistic for me to just do a 3-hour speedrun at that point. It took almost half a year since my last run, until May 2018, that I would finally do a speedrun again. I came back to Grounded, however there was yet another problem with that. A trick has been found that for certain sections made it possible to duplicate nail bombs. Last of Us and its glitches always had a big grey area when it came to the speedrunning rules, because this game has so many weird things, bugs and glitches that it wasn't always obvious what should be allowed and what shouldn't. Now, years later, it's pretty obvious what we should have done, but back then we actually decided to allow it. On 18th May I got a 255.43. During this time period, Ant has grinded down his time to a 253 already. A week later, on 25th May, I got a 255.23. And on 4th June I got a 255.18. However, after that we decided that allowing the bomb duplication was a bad idea, so we decided to ban it, which means my 3 runs, the only runs I've done in that year so far, got rejected and my grounded PB got set back to the 256.27. I also was the only one who was affected by that, since the duplication was allowed for only a couple weeks and no one else PB'd during that time. In June, completely out of nowhere, Matt posted a video. He found a new skip in sewers, saving around 1.5 minutes. This was huge. This was the first new skip since 2015 and the biggest time save in 3 years. For the longest time it seemed like there would never be any new skips in Last of Us anymore, due to how the checkpoint system works in Last of Us. We optimized the skip and the good thing was it was pretty simple to do. Then Matt also came back and has beaten my time, getting the first 232. For those reasons I left Grounded behind for now and came back to any % New Game Plus. It's been 8 months since my last PB, so naturally there have been a few new time saves. For example in Slums 1, 2, 3 and 4, in Sewers and in Coal Mine. I completely choked in Capital, but obviously we had a 1.5 minute time save coming up later because of the new skip, so this was basically a no reset unless something majorly goes wrong.
No, I cannot grab him. Oh, I can.
The new skip came up and I got it first try, golding the split by 1 minute and 19 seconds. I held the pace and got the clicker trick this time, saving me lots of time over my PB. On 26 July 2018 I PB'd by almost 2 minutes and got a 231.49, the first 231. 2 days later I got a 231.23 and on 2nd August 2018, 3 years after my first run, a 231.15. The run was really good until Bill's Town, being on pace for a 230. Unfortunately I got the Bill's softlock at Doggy Door, losing me 30 seconds.
Okay. What? What the fuck?
Immediately after that I got an amazing high school, getting the lead back right away and on top of that got truck push.
Oh, I got the truck push, nice. Okay, this makes up for the shotgun ammo.
Or not.
What, Bill? What?
Whatever, I fought back and managed to almost get tied to my PB again until Science Building. There I got something I have talked about earlier in the video, but haven't gotten it during a PB run since. Ellie plus sign and Science Building. I really needed that in this run and that was the game trying to say sorry for what it did earlier. I got the deer first try and kept playing really well. Because the run wasn't amazing, I also used some risky strats. I had a funny movement mistake in hospital then.
No. What did I do? Oh my god.
But I didn't really care about that. I got a new PB and finished the run with a 231.15. This would become my last of Us run in the year 2018. At this time I was on the waiting list for my stay at the psychiatry and I had no strength left for 3-hour speedruns. But I actually had an idea. What about running Uncharted 1? I have done a few runs in 2016. I know some people in the community and it might be chill. I don't want to talk too much about UC1 in this video, but I'm not gonna lie, I had a great time running it. I could really make use of the shorter run, just enjoy and chill, and I started getting more into contact with Arims, one of the coolest guys and greatest speedrunners I've ever seen and the goat of Uncharted speedruns. We were writing from time to time in the year before that, but here we were in daily contact. I was constantly writing him, asking stuff about the run and the strats. He was the nicest guy and really helped me, not only speedrunning wise, but also helped me to get through the waiting time I was in. My focus was the main category, any percent no airwalk, and I ran it for only a bit over a month, but almost daily. On 5th August I got a 49.18. A few hours later I got a 46.10. A day later a 45.01. Another day later a 44.52. I felt like a sub 45 was already pretty good, but I kept improving quickly. Right on the next attempt I got a 43.51, claiming 5th place after only 3 days of running. 2 days later I got another 1 minute PB with a 42.44. Then a few days later a 42.42, a week later a 42.11 and a 42.02 on the same day. Then a 41.48 the day after that, and on 30th August I got a 41.40. Uncharted back then didn't separate between launches and no launches. So launches were allowed, but they came in with a trade. They were very hard to execute and some of them were really inconsistent and even entirely random, but they could save a decent amount of time, especially for a 40 minutes run. From now on I started using launches and tried to push my time down even further. On 1st September I got a 41.34 and a week later on 8th September 2018 I achieved a 41.07. This would be my final Uncharted 1 time. I was really happy and proud. In 1 month I grinded down my time immensely, was one of the few runners who used launches in his runs, and I managed to get 2nd place with a fairly decent run, ending up right behind Arims. After that I went to the psychiatry and disappeared for the next 5 months. My any percent New Game Plus PB didn't get beaten in the meantime, but I still decided to come back to this category because it was unfinished business and I noticed the potential. On 10th February 2019 I got a 231.12. A day later I got a 0.4 second PB with a 231.11. In this run I used something new for the first time, a death warp in Outside High School. I'm not even sure who found that, maybe Ant or one of his viewers. In Outside High School, if you blow up the last enemy and Joel with the same nail bomb, the game puts you right next to the checkpoint at the end of the fight. Not only is it faster, it also duplicates the item drops you got in this fight. This means we will save time and also leave with max ammo. A side effect is that Bill and Ellie become invisible. 3 days later I got a big PB, a 230.38, the first 230. This run was something special, not because of its time, but because it showed a sub 230 was possible. The game The Last of Us could actually be beaten within less than 2.5 hours. I wanted to be the first one who achieves this, so I kept going. Especially since I was over a minute ahead at one point in the run, but I had some time losses, for example the black screen glitch in Science Building.
No, I got the black screen, really. I got the black screen.
The bomb duplication I've been talking about earlier also found its use now for any percent runs. Any percent slowly getting more and more tricks. It only took me 2 more days to get it, a 229.56.
Again. Oh my god, man. My brother just came in and he said world record because he was watching as well.
The run was great, honestly. There were only very little mistakes, like missing the deer, and most of the run was just really good. On 16th February 2019, The Last of Us was beaten in less than 2.5 hours. It was a great feeling, especially since over the years I gained more control over the skips and any percent tricks. I learned a lot, the route got more optimized, and this category shifted more and more to being a skill-based speedrun with only little luck involved. A big improvement over what we had a few years earlier, where some of the skips and strats felt like a dice roll. I continued playing any percent New Game Plus, and a week later I got a 2:29.48. On 7th March 2019, I actually did a speedrun of Uncharted 2. My first run was a 1:38.49, and immediately after I did another run and got a 1:29.53. This was really cool because I got a sub 1:30 on my first day of running UC2 and also got 3rd place with this. I honestly expected to have more fun running this though, and since then I have never ran Uncharted 2 again, so this is still my PB. I continued with any percent New Game Plus in Last of Us, and on 9th March 2019 I got a 2:29.38. The run was really good, almost on 2:28 pace, but I lost 20 seconds to missing the bloater's foot in winter.
No! No. Rip run. Rip run, literally. Oh my god. David. This wasted 20 seconds or something. Oh my god, I'm losing all my time. Fuck you, man.
However, this run time-wise is basically what my 2:29.56 was, just without missing the deer, so I was happy leaving this category with this, for now. Then I came back to Left Behind, after not running it for almost 1.5 years. The world record for any percent PS4 was a 5:25.3 by Ant, and on 22nd March 2019 I beat his time by less than 0.3 seconds and got a 5:25.025. On the same day I got a 5:24, a 5:23 and a day later a 5:22. I went back to the main game and still had to update my any percent time after my latest any percent New Game Plus PB, so I got a 2:33 flat. I've always been someone who was more world record hunting instead of grinding down a category when I already held the world record, even though there were some exceptions where I definitely did that, so I continued with glitchless New Game Plus. Ant's world record was a 2:49.24, and on 29th March 2019 I got a 2:50.02. One day later I got a 2:49.21, beating the world record by 3 seconds. Then I went on with glitchless New Game. Ant's world record was a 2:52.36, and just one day after I got my New Game Plus PB, I got a 2:52.34, beating the world record by 2 seconds. After that, it was time for an updated time for all collectibles, so on 3rd April I did one run and achieved a 3:11.44. My time in the glitchless category wasn't good, so I had to improve it. On 7th April I got a 2:51.08, setting a big new world record. 4 days later I got my smallest PB ever, a 0.2 second PB with a 2:51.07, but unfortunately this wasn't a world record. Within these few days Ant has gotten a 2:50.58. After a small break it was time to finally improve my grounded time again. Because of my health problems and the rejection of 3 of my PBs, my grounded PB at that point was almost 2 years old, which was an insanely long time. Ant was already in the 2:51s now, while I still had my 2:56 PB from 2017, the one that was 8 seconds behind world record at its time. On 6th June I got a 2:55.46, finally setting a real new grounded PB. Of course, my PB was obsolete, there were many new findings and I could basically save time everywhere, but instead I began with a funny death in cargo.
Oh my god. Wow! Okay, that was my fault basically.
The run was pretty bad, at one point I was even a minute behind my PB. 2 days later I got a 2:55.13 and a few days later a 2:54.35. My time was a bit better now. In the meantime, Ant actually went and got the world record for any percent New Game Plus. He got it 2:29:30, beating my PB by 8 seconds. Of course, after running grounded for a bit, I had to come back to any percent New Game Plus. On 30th June 2019, I got it 2:29:23, beating the world record by 7 seconds. I was actually super nervous during this run. Runs always have different feelings to it. Sometimes I'm nervous, sometimes I'm not. When I already have the world record and go for a PB, the feeling is different than when I try to beat someone else's world record, for example. Apparently, looking at the screenshot, I was low on sugar at the beginning of this run and it was super hot. I also didn't have the world record, so I was more nervous than usual. Also, at this point I knew that a 2:28 was possible and that one day I would go for it. After this run, I once again ran left behind and improved my any percent PS4 time with a 5:20.966. On 25th July, I did an any percent run to update my time, which was a 2:32.23 in this case. After this, later during that day, Matt, Thrill and me were doing some Uncharted 2 co-op runs again. We hadn't done any runs in the last 3 years and we had to do it now because the Uncharted 2 multiplayer servers were about to get shut down. This time we ran the map Nepal Warzone and it was just as cool and successful as our runs in 2016. We also did a few attempts on the third and last map, the village, but never uploaded or submitted it. I also remember Thrill randomly saying that for Last of Us, any percent in his opinion is probably the best category. He didn't know I got the world record for this exact category just a few hours earlier. The next day it was time to go back to glitchless and get back the world record from Ant. I got a 2:50.33. This was a big PB actually, and also got the glitchless New Game Plus world record back with a 2:48.38, which was a really good run. You might have already noticed, but since the beginning, Ant and me have always basically ran every category and we were always trying to get world records and beat each other's times. Most of the time I went over the categories, got world record, then he did the same, then I did it again, then he did it again, etc. But his and my main focus always were categories like grounded or also any percent New Game Plus in my case, while only doing a small amount of attempts for the other categories. The world records went back and forth that quickly because we would usually only do one run, then not run that category for half a year, so when we would come back to one category, our PBs were obsolete and therefore easy to beat within 1 or 2 attempts. It would stay like that for many years, with a few exceptions of course. I want to say though that Ant and me aren't the only players or the only world record holders in Last of Us. This time I got a 2:48.14, claiming world record back once again. On 2nd August 2019, 4 years after my first speedrun, I got a 3:10 flat for all collectibles, which would stay my PB for a long time. This was a funny one, because I was semi-hyped for a sub 3:10, but I actually got stuck at the very end. I just couldn't climb, which wasted 10 seconds.
I can never climb up. Climb! I cannot climb. Dude. I'm stuck. I'm literally stuck. Wow. Of course.
After that, I did something entirely different. There is a whole leaderboard for Last of Us challenge runs, and I thought it would be a nice change if I try a run there. On 12th August 2019, I did one run in the guns only category and got a 2:55.59. Was a funny run, but nothing serious. This run actually marks the end of an era, because I would now disappear for an entire year. You heard right, my longest break from speedrunning ever was about to happen, and it was once again unintended and unwanted. Towards the end of 2019, things went downhill for me again, and I once again put myself onto the waiting list for another stay at a psychiatry. This time only semi-residential, but again for 3 months. My stay ended in July 2020, and I actually played Last of Us 2 during that time when I could go home on a weekend. I really profited from the COVID pandemic, and the stay at the psychiatry was so good I managed to finally realize what the fuck was going on. It was all about self-government. After the stay, I moved out and got my own apartment, went to a new psychiatrist who for the following years I since then would see twice a week, and who also plays a big role later on for my speedrunning life. From that point onward, I never had any health problems again. In August 2020, I returned to speedrunning, and not only did my health situation change, but also other circumstances. I got way more viewers than before and my entire mindset was different. I got less nervous, I didn't get mad at anything anymore, and I tried to improve more and more. I also started making money with it, which was something I could have done years earlier, but I never wanted to. I felt way too bad with the thought of other people giving me money, so I ignored that for my first 5 to 6 years of streaming. And honestly, my today's perspective is, it's both a blessing and a curse. Because I started making money with it, I also had to tell my mother. I actually never told her what I was doing, and she never asked. 5 years of speedrunning and only my brother knew. When I came back, I started with Grounded. On 17th August 2020, I got a 2:53.59, which was a decent start to my comeback. Of course, new strats were found during that year. For example, Shooting in Capital, the fast and weaponless hotel restaurant strat, which was found by me, and Forest Fight strat was amazing now and prevented the spawn of the last enemies, making this super fast and consistent. Just one day later, I got a 2:52.46, another minute barrier broken. 2 weeks later, I got a 2:52.30, PB'd again the next day by 3 seconds, and on 18th September I got a 2:52.24. After that run, it was when I moved out, so I had a little break there, but on 12th February 2021 I got a 2:51.47, another big improvement. Just 2 days later I got a 2:51.22, another decent PB and improving my PB by over 3 minutes in the last few months. From here on, the next era started.
Nee, ich mag Toffifee nicht so.
I finally got myself a new and decent PC. Until that day, I have always been streaming in 480p at most, and when I was watching streams, I always watched in 480p too. I would also only have one monitor, no real microphone and just a bad setup in general. I bought more monitors, a microphone, got a really good internet connection in my new apartment and also a webcam for the first time. On 3rd May 2021 I got a 2:51.20. The run easily could have been a 2:50, but you know, stuff happened. After that, I took a break of a few months. I also always loved playing other games. In 2021 it was Final Fantasy XIV and Final Fantasy XI, for example. And after a couple months of speedrunning, I would always need a break and wanted to do other stuff too. During my long break from 2019 to 2020, all my times have been beaten and Ant held the world record for any % New Game Plus with a 2:29.01. So when I came back in September, I ran any % New Game Plus again, with my former goal of a 2:28 in mind. On 2nd September 2021, I got a 2:28.56, the first 2:28. The run was more or less the same as my previous PB, obviously implementing the new things, but there was actually a new any% exclusive trick that was found in 2020 by Wardy58. He found out that here in Science Building, when you switch the game to 30 FPS, which is an option in the game's settings, Joel and Ellie teleport to the end of the room. While this looks like a small time save, this actually saves over 15 seconds. There were also more new weapon switches now. During this era, I started doing less category hopping and actually tried to improve my times further and further. Immediately the next stream, I got a 2:28:45. As I said, I wanted more, and for this category I noticed big potential within myself and the category. With the 2:28, this category was far away from being done. 2 days later I got a 2:28:14, already a really low 2:28. On 6th September 2021, for the first time I have actually found a skip. In all those years I have found countless of strats and even many glitches, out of bounds, etc. But this here was the first actual skip that I contributed to any %. It's called Ration Card Skip, and it skips the in-game cutscene with this guy entering slums and lets you move right into the first slums fight. While it is a small skip, saving only 14 seconds, it was huge for me, because in the previous 6 years there were a few occasions where runners got this accidentally, myself included, but it was super rare. Basically one runner a year getting this by accident, and we didn't know how or why it happened. I started playing around with it, spent hours on the emulator testing the cutscene triggers, studied Tess's movement and finally figured this out after so many years. The secret was that the cutscene triggers when Joel and Tess are inside the cutscene trigger. The thing is, if Tess is inside the trigger, we can't get past it anymore, so in order to skip this cutscene, you need to make Tess slow down, so she will only reach the cutscene trigger when we have already passed it. Since this is the very beginning of the game, movement here is very limited. We need to have very precise movement with Joel, making Tess think we go backwards, which makes her turn around and gives us just a little bit of extra time to run past the trigger. This is so tight that in runs we sometimes fail this by just a few frames. Now that my PB was a low 2:28 and I found this skip, of course I wanted the 2:27, which I got 3 days later on 7th September with the 2:27:54, the first 2:27. The run had quite some time losses, but the new skip worked and another barrier was broken, so I didn't care about that. The first 2:27 wasn't enough, because apparently the next stream, on 10th September 2021, I would have one of the craziest streams ever, probably the craziest stream for me up until that point, both speedrunning and streaming wise. I started the stream in the afternoon and got a 2:27:40, a 14 seconds PB, on the very first attempt. It was still early and I had lots of fun, so I kept trying and did runs for hours. I did many attempts. Then, 9 hours into the stream, I got a very special run.
Oh my god, dude. 2:27:11. I cannot believe it, dude. I'm sweating so hard.
Hey, wait.
Dude. What? I really got it, dude. This is unreal, to be honest.
I did it. After an almost 12 hours stream, I got another PB, and that one was not even a small one. There is something that makes this run even more special. I actually finished this run seconds before my birthday. While the credits were playing, my birthday began on 11th September. I got 2 world records in one stream, was really exhausted after a 12-hour stream, had over 100 people watching and had one of the best starts into a birthday ever. What a day. On Twitter, I later claimed that this was my best run in 6 years running this. But this 2:27:11 was actually pretty close to a 2:26, and as I said before, I wanted to stop the category hopping, so this was the perfect chance now to finally get a time that isn't easy to beat for other players. The grind went on for another week, and on 18th September 2021 I started a run that would become my best run until then.
God, dude, I really got it. Look at the splits, dude. What the fuck have I done?
For a long time with surviving.
My 2:27:11 was already great, but this run topped it all. Another 32 seconds PB and the first 2:26. In my 6 years of speedrunning, this was the best run I have done. That was a very special feeling and I almost couldn't believe it. The run had that feeling of being too good to be true. I had no intention to improve my any % New Game Plus time anymore, unless someone beats it or anything big gets found. So next was another occasional any % updated strats run, which was a 2:31:41 at first. But that wasn't a world record, Ends PB was a 2:31:29, so I started another attempt and then immediately after got a 2:29:53, the first sub 2.5 hours new game run. As I said, no category hopping anymore, and I felt like I could do a lot better, so I continued with any % and on 27th September I got a 2:28:52. I was really happy with my any % times, and since my 1 year break I haven't done any runs for glitchless New Game Plus. My 248 was 2 years old and got beaten by Ant during my break with a 247.43. But not only by him, Abs Games entered the game too. Abs started speedrunning in 2020 and he actually began with grounded speedruns. He's a very talented speedrunner. At first, like everyone else, he started getting normal times, but the special thing about him was that he'd improve faster than others even though his setup was a disaster. He was playing laying in bed and playing on a TV. Not only did he improve quickly and after getting a better setup managed to get second place on grounded in 2022, but he was also super young. I think he is around 8 years younger than me, so I was seeing him as the first person who could enter Ant's and my competition in this game. Unfortunately, he hasn't done any runs in the last 3 years. However, he's still super young and I hope that one day he will return and make use of his talent. Back to Glitchless New Game Plus. So Abs was mainly running grounded, but eventually did some Glitchless New Game Plus runs, eventually getting world record, and when I came back to this category, his world record was a 246.46, the first 246 in this category. On my first stream back at this category, within the first few attempts I got a 247.37. During the same stream on the next attempt I got a 246.31 and claimed back world record. Once again, no category hopping anymore, so I continued with Glitchless New Game Plus, and on 2nd October 2021 I got a 246.26. The next day I got a 246.23. Another 2 days later a 246.20, and another 2 days later I got a 246.05. I got many PBs and the time got close to a 245, but this grind was actually very annoying. I don't know why, at least I have no logical explanation for that, but it just felt cursed. Ammo drops, enemy patterns and overall momentum was just screwed, and I had a really hard time getting a good run going. The interesting thing about this 246.05 was that, unlike my previous PBs, this was not a world record anymore, and came back to this category too, and on 6th October, one day after my 246.20, he got a 245.26, a great time and the first 245. One day after my latest PB, I got a 245.48. Then, on 16th October, after an exhausting grind, I got a 245.14 and claimed back world record. This was a relief and I was happy with it. I moved on to the next category, but Ant actually came back and got a 244.56 in November, the first 244, and a really good time. Here, my real life changed a lot. I started studying social work. Because of the ongoing pandemic, however, my entire first semester was taking place online, so I had time to get used to it. After the Glitchless New Game Plus grind, I came back to any percent, because Ant has beaten my time with a 228.15. On 22nd October 2021, I got a 228.14, getting world record back by 1 second. It was a big PB, but I still had some time losses. I wanted to improve my any percent time further, but I had one problem. You know the feeling when you cut your fingernails very short? For the weapon switch glitch in Last of Us, I actually used my left thumb, but since my fingernails were too short, it started hurting, to the point where I felt like I can't do a run and need to play something else. Since it has been ages since my last glitchless run, over 2 years, I used this state to just do some semi-serious glitchless runs, since the PB should almost be free. I PB'd by 2.5 minutes and got a 248.02. Immediately on the next attempt I got a 247.26. These were not world records though, the world record at that time was a 246.48 by Ant. After a few days my fingers were fine again and I continued with any percent. During my few days away from any percent, Ant actually got the world record back already with a time of 227.28. A few days later I got a 227.52 and another day later a 227.47, still being behind world record by quite a bit. However, after this, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker released and I disappeared for 2 months. In January 2022, I did something entirely different. I started running Final Fantasy XV. FF15 is one of my favorite games of all time, and I thought the speedrun could be super chill and just a good time in general. If we count in practice, I ran the game for a little less than a month, but similar to my Uncharted 1 grind in August 2018, very excessively. This speedrun is over 4 hours long and I sometimes did multiple runs a day and sometimes even PB'd twice in one day. So I started with a 433.50 on 19th January 2022. 3 days later I got 2 PBs with a 433.05 and a 419.10. The next day a 412.41. 2 days later I PB'd twice again with a 4:10:45 and a 4:09 flat, and then finally on 29th January 2022 I got a 4:05:16, which was my final run in this game and a pretty decent run, getting 5th place. It was honestly a very fun time and I enjoyed it a lot. When I came back to Last of Us on 3rd May 2022, I first felt like doing a PS3 run. It was just something I felt like doing there. It was more like a challenge run. It's called Integral Percent, a name I saw Luzbel using when talking about Final Fantasy speedruns. A category that's basically glitchless in a way of using only things the devs intended to. I don't want to go into detail. If you want, you can check out the details in the paste bin I wrote back then. It's in the description. But this run basically had different rules and I did this on grounded mode on PS3. Immediately after the run I noticed this is something I don't really want to pursue though. The following time was very special actually. I was gonna focus on grounded again and I basically had like 2 or more accidental 12 hours streams a week here. I was grinding and improving a lot. It was lots of fun. Abs has also beaten my time and claimed 2nd place. I've always been on 2nd place in this category since I started running this, so of course I had to try to beat him. On 11th May 2022 at 4 AM and after a 12-hour stream I got a 2:51:08. This run actually finished 1 second behind Abs. However, immediately the next day I got a 2:50:39. Ant's world record at that time was a 2:48 by the way. 2 weeks later, after another 10-hour stream, I got a 2:50:31. 2 days later, a 2:50:25. Then on 6th June 2022 I got a 2:49:45, my first 2:49 and a run I was really proud of. I once again got a bit closer to world record and the first 2:49 felt really special. It was also a really intense run.
What the fuck happened here?
That was so close. I was a bit slow there. Look, I got it! I just realized.
And there it is, a 40-second PB with my first 249 on grounded. Listen to how happy I was with this.
Oh my god. Yeah! Yes, dude! Oh my god, the 249.45.
After my first 249, since I broke that barrier, I got some momentum and I had a run. Just a few days later, I got a 249.36, and I think with 200 viewers, without getting raids, this was the highest amount of viewers I had during a PB run. 2 weeks later, on 3rd July, I got another PB with a 249.29, leaving grounded with this for now. After this grounded grind, I needed a break and went on with any % New Game Plus because I wanted to be the world record holder in this category when The Last of Us HBO show would begin a few months later. In June, Matt also found a new skip in Pittsburgh, basically extending the already existing Pittsburgh skip. This basically lets us skip the enemies in the bookstore, you also keep your sprint speed and skip the in-game cutscene before Pittsburgh skip. The problem is, this only saves around 30 seconds and was insanely hard to get. The movement was very tricky and you had to run on invisible things. It was super precise, and also, if you failed the end of Pittsburgh skip, the game would send you back to before this skip, losing even more time. For now, I would only attempt it when I wasn't happy with the ongoing run. On 21st August 2022, I got a 2:26:33 and beat my previous time that I was so proud of, without using the new skip. Immediately the attempt after that run, I did another attempt, and on this attempt I felt like just going for the skip, because why not?
It feels like I'm in practice right now. That's so weird. Oh my fucking god. I got it. I cannot believe it. First try I've ever tried to skip and I got it.
I actually got it. This was the first time I've ever attempted it during a run, and I got it. The run ended up being a 2:26:10 and improved my time significantly. It could have been a 2:25, but I got trolled in damn fight by the door not closing after the Molotov throw, losing me over 20 seconds. But that was the first run ever that performed the new skip, and I also claimed back world record before the HBO show. I was happy. Watching this back, I also just noticed how often I got multiple PBs in one stream. Fun fact, my plan of getting the world record back for this category before the HBO show worked really well. Until recently, this was my most watched PB and the first time one of my speedruns hit over 10,000 views. I just wanted new people to see my name on the top when they check the leaderboards after watching the show. After getting this time, I disappeared again for another 6 months until April 2023. This time I would come back with grounded speedruns, but I couldn't get a PB in the first week or two, and then did a very special stream and a special speedrun, something I have had in mind for many years already. I wanted to do an all difficulties speedrun, a speedrun of all 5 difficulties back to back without any breaks. And this is exactly what I was about to do on 22nd April 2023. I was about to do 5 glitchless runs in a row. Easy mode, normal mode, hard mode, survivor mode, and finally grounded mode with an estimated time of 16 hours. For the splits, I added together all my PB splits from those categories, which for normal, hard and survivor mode for example, were my splits from 2015. This run was lots of fun to do, because I always enjoyed just playing the game, and doing a speedrun like this basically guaranteed me 5 full game no reset runs with many improvisations needed, which kept the tension up for the entire duration of the run. In this all difficulties run I have beaten easy mode in 2:48:55, normal mode in 2:52:53, which was a world record and beat my time from 2015, hard mode in 2:55:09, which was also a world record and beat my time from 2015, survivor mode in 2:54:50, which was a world record and actually my first survivor world record, and grounded mode in 2:51:19. After that, in May 2023, I actually ran Left Behind again to chill a bit with shorter runs. I hadn't touched Left Behind for almost 4 years. My PB was obsolete and there was also a new way of doing the skip. Ant's world record was a 5:07.47, and on my first day back to this, I PB'd 6 times, getting a 5:20, another 5:20, a 5.17, 5.16, 5.15 and a 5.12. The next day I got a 5.10, a 5.9 and a 5.07.73, only being behind world record by 0.26 seconds. Then, the next day on 19th May 2023, I was streaming for 13 hours, non-stop trying to improve one last time to get the world record. I had so many failed runs and close calls, look at this. Okay. Dude, fucking widescreen taking forever. No, 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 no. 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 Oh my fucking god, dude. That was my fault. Until after 13 hours of trying, I finally got a 5.07.3. Okay, this is the salty run back. Oh man. No! Maybe? This run is still my PB and I haven't run Left Behind again since then. It would take another 2 months until August 2023 when I would finally return to speedrunning the main game. During my break, my perception about speedrunning and its categories has shifted a bit. In Last of Us, any % New Game Plus has always been the main category since it was the fastest one, but I started feeling drawn towards any % New Game more, because it felt more pure to me. You know, basically buying a game, putting the disc into the console, press start game and finish as quickly as possible. For me, that is the purest version of a speedrun. I never really focused much on any %. It was always the, you know, occasional any % run to update an obsolete time. That would change from now on. When I came back, the world record was a 2:27.28 by Ant, but at this point his run was already 2 years old. When I came back on 4th August 2023, 8 years now after my first speedrun, I got a 2:27.39. With this run, we actually just entered what would become my most legendary grind I have done in those 10 years. My any % grind that would start off slowly and end up with the coolest thing I have done in my entire life. Those who've watched my streams probably noticed that sometimes either after attempts are done or when I'm bored, I start doing random things in the game. Sometimes just mashing X everywhere, hoping Joel would randomly climb somewhere, sometimes just pressing random buttons. In mid-2022, Thrill found a quick turn melee deload glitch, which is a universal glitch that can be performed almost anywhere in the game. You basically position Joel close to a wall, do a quick turn, punch immediately to slow down the camera, then do another quick turn right away, which then forces the camera to go out of bounds for a split second if done correctly. This has different results. The camera being out of bounds can make the game think we're not in the area anymore and therefore deloading it. It can also make an area that's behind our current location load in. It can despawn enemies, NPCs and overall has very different results. The camera speed and length of the deload also get influenced by whether you punch with fists, a melee weapon, a brick, whether you're crouched or standing, whether your flashlight is turned on or off, whether you pause or not when the camera is out of bounds, and even works differently between Joel and Ellie as the playable characters. On most walls in the game it doesn't do anything though, there must be something behind the wall we're doing it. Thrill played around with this a lot and even found some smaller things. He even made a video about what Last of Us speedruns could look like if they had Uncharted glitches. You should definitely check out his video about this. While this glitch is a universal glitch, it sounds more OP than it actually is. We couldn't really find any use for it in the speedrun, and even after a year it was more like something funny to play around with, but nothing helpful for the runs. Until on 11th August 2023, 1 year after the glitch was found, I've had a moment I just explained where I would just do random stuff and press random buttons. On this day I was just running around in the game and punching some walls. Then, after some time, I noticed that this one wall in Science Building was different. For whatever reason, it deloaded the entire area. I continued and then noticed that when doing this during the fight, it despawns every single enemy, skipping the entire fight, which wouldn't really do much for the runs, to be honest. There were some random side effects like Floaty Joel when you went over some previous load triggers upstairs, for example. I thought, okay, what if I approach the triangle prompt for the upcoming cutscene in this state? So I did exactly that. Joel glitched out completely and the door opened, but there were no enemies. This is a soft lock, so I restarted the checkpoint, and instead of putting me back to before the cutscene, the game actually put me into a spot after the cutscene. Even in this moment I had no idea what was lying in front of me. I had a feeling of, okay, that looked a bit faster actually, but I wasn't sure. I opened up my PB on YouTube and timed it, and I couldn't believe my eyes. This was actually 1 minute faster. On top of that, it saves us a smoke bomb and makes it impossible to get the black screen glitch anymore. We hadn't found any big skips since Matt found the sewers skip in 2018, which means this was the biggest time save found in the last 5 years, and it was the biggest find I have made in my 8 years of speedrunning and glitch hunting. I was insanely proud and looking forward to doing attempts. Until 3 days later. So once again I had a moment of doing random things in the game, punching some walls, etc. You might already know what's next. I was punching the wall in Searchlight when we were getting followed by the tank. I noticed that wall had a decent deload and changed the game's behavior a bit. The tank was not really entering, I could deload the entire section and get back to the previous area, etc. So after a few tries, I once again thought, what if I approach the triangle prompt for the next sequence while the area is deloaded? And once again I couldn't believe my eyes. I pressed the triangle prompt, but Joel wouldn't enter the cutscene. Instead, the game almost instantly gave me the checkpoint for after the in-game cutscene. The thing is, this in-game cutscene is almost a minute long. Subtracting the time it takes to do the deload, I just found another 45-second time save, and this one is free. Almost nothing can go wrong. So now we had around 2 minutes of new time save, which made any previous any% run obsolete. After this, I continued running the game, and 2 days later, on 16th August 2023, I finally claimed back the world record for any% with a 2:27:20. This was only a PB/world record because of the new stuff. The run actually had many bad parts. At least the 2 new skips worked. Another 2 days later, I got a 2:26:50. This run had a huge lead and the skips worked even better than before. Then this happened.
Dude! What the fuck?
What? Now he gives me the ammo!
Whatever, first 2:26 in this category and a decent PB. When I went offline after this run, my grind quickly got interrupted again. I once again had a moment where I started messing around with random things in the game, and I once again found something interesting. This time not a skip, but something I thought had potential. After I got my PB, it was already pretty late, so I didn't investigate much, but I noticed that from the Billstown semis area, you can get a long chain of different deloads that let you continue through the chapter for a long time. Unfortunately without any active checkpoints, and as I said, no skip found yet, but I had a feeling and I wanted to investigate, so this time, on the next day, I started the stream so I could test and discuss it live.
Now you can see how everything is deloaded. This gate is open, you can just run through. This is despawned as well. You can go here. Is the problem. We cannot proceed. First thing, we checked it on emulator. The checkpoint behind this door is active. So I can move over the trigger, move over it again, and the door should be despawned now. But now the problem, it spawned back in.
Then, after 2 hours of trying to get through the door, but the door always loading in right in front of my eyes, this happened.
Oh my god, please. Please, 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 please. I actually made it through. Oh, please, 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 please. Let's Joel any guy or whatever the fuck. I actually made it. I can get that. Where was the enemy? Oh. Actually, the checkpoint must be right here. I got a checkpoint. No fucking way, dude. We fucking have a Bill's Town skip, dude.
I have no idea what was going on during that time. How come I speedrun and glitch hunt for 8 years without finding any skips, and now I find 3 groundbreaking skips within a single week. I felt blessed. There was something special about that time, and believe me when I still say this was only the beginning of this era. However, first things first, there were a few problems with this new Bill's Town skip. First, while this skip isn't the biggest when it comes to saved time, this actually skips such a big part of the game that I had to think about this skip even being worth doing at all. Doing this skip, we skip the bow, the shotgun, the nail bomb, a toolbox, 3 arrows, 15 parts, half an alcohol, 3/4 explosive, another 3/4 explosive, a quarter alcohol, half a bandage, half a rag, 1/4 scissor, half a rag, 2 shotgun shells, a bandage, a quarter of a scissor, and another half a rag. This skip would only save 30 seconds max. Is all of this even worth it? Because of the slow movement speed and all the back and forth, this was also the longest skip now in the game, with a performing time of around 4.5 minutes, all without reaching any checkpoints, meaning if you mess up, the run is entirely over, and this skip happens 1 hour into the run. These weren't even the only problems. Another problem was that the timing was so tight and precise that it felt inconsistent and risky to do. I have spent another 8 hours just during that stream to figure out a somewhat acceptable way of performing this skip. Also shoutouts to Zilla, who during the entire stream tested the skip by herself and brought in ideas. The good thing is, it later turned out that making up for the missed stuff was actually very easy. We can get the bow in doggy door, the shotgun is on the ground here, the nail bomb is right there on the table, and even all the other missed stuff surprisingly didn't matter, it was easy to compensate. I would now start using the new Bill's Town skip in runs, but it sucked. Sometimes I got it, sometimes I failed it, and it just felt weird. However, a few days later, on 24th August, I got a 2:26:06 with a successfully performed Bill's Town skip. Considering we now had around 2.5 minutes of new time saves, this still wasn't a great time yet though. Whatever, this run was a big PB and it included all 3 new skips. After finding Bill's Town skip and getting a PB with it, I took another break for 2 months. I was playing some other games, for example Death Stranding and Final Fantasy XIV in the meantime. This time, however, I got drawn back to Last of Us because I've received a very surprising message. I got accepted for AGDQ 2024, the biggest speedrunning event in the world, taking place twice a year in the USA, with hundreds of thousands of people watching. I have never submitted a run anywhere before, so this really caught me off guard. At this point, I didn't even know if I want to go there or if I even can go there. You remember my health issues I mentioned earlier? All this comes into play later on. I want to say, I have made a 1.5 hours long video about my run and my time at AGDQ, with IRL clips, like a vlog, sequences where I talked about the struggles of that journey, a room tour, etc. So I won't mention everything again here. But what's important for this video is, after a few weeks, after talking to my brother, my mother, my therapist and thinking about it, I decided to go. This means I came back to running Last of Us any % in November. The event would take place in January, so I had around 2 months for preparation. Not only for preparation, but I wanted to grind for a really good time. Anthony was playing any % at that time too, and this time I wanted to show it to everyone. No category hopping, no breaks, no semi-acceptable PBs anymore. I wanted to grind the time down, optimize every little thing in the run, gain control over all the skips, beating everyone else and smash everything this game has ever seen before. So when I would go to AGDQ, I could play the best I could ever have imagined myself like as a speedrunner. The focus of my entire life, my entire mentality and everything I had laid on this speedrun now. On 14th November 2023, I got a 2:25:49, the first 2:25. The next stream I got another PB with a 2:25:44. The next day, however, I got interrupted. Thrill messaged me. He was testing Bill's town skip and brought in some ideas. He showed me a video where he was standing in front of the church, telling me that we might get a better version of the skip if we could deload it from there. The funny thing here was that I told him that I'd boot up my console, which I did, and around 1 hour later I already found a solution. I found another deload on the gate here, which allowed us to continue. Thrill and me were writing a lot at that time, and Bill's town skip was basically a fusion of his and my thoughts. We took everything he found and everything I found and put it together into one thing. On 17th November, we finally had an updated version of Bill's town skip. This was insane because not only does it save another 1.5 minutes, so 2 minutes in total for Bill's town skip, which makes it the biggest time save found since 2015 when Thrill found Pittsburgh skip, but it was also way easier to do compared to the previous versions. It also looked cooler because our movement speed was faster, and instead of 4.5 minutes, this skip now only took 2.5 minutes to get. Also, until this day, we would always still play on a PS4 Pro, because Last of Us has a PS4 exclusive glitch for the David fight, saving 14 seconds over any other console. The new Bill's town skip requires the game to load many things though, and as it turned out, PS5 is way faster for this skip than PS4, meaning from now on, PS5 was the fastest version for this game, which was also a great change because PS5 is more accessible than a PS4 Pro with SSD, and the PS5 doesn't sound like a rocket engine. I also reached out to the GDQ staff and they changed it so I could do my run on a PS5 instead of PS4. Finding this 2 months before GDQ was a blessing, and doing this in cooperation with someone who's a speedrunner since 2006 and probably one of the most experienced glitch hunters in the world was an honor for me. So I was ready to continue my grind and my GDQ preparation, but as I said, during this time period something was truly special and God and fate interfered again. Just 1 day after the updated Bill's town skip, I remember it was a Saturday, I was playing around with some out of bounces in sewers and noticed something. I was just randomly swimming towards the direction of where the chapter basically ends. This wasn't anything new. The out of bounds were known for at least 8 years. There were even different versions of it. We, especially Matt and Thrill, tested this excessively on emulator, tested the areas, the checkpoints and the angles you could swim at, but there was no skip there. It was also hard to test because it was really time consuming, with each try taking around 5 minutes, and this area crashes the game pretty easily. Joel's movement in the water is also limited. You can swim normally while being surfaced, but doing this you can't change Joel's height and you swim more slowly. If you dive, Joel can swim faster and you can change his height, but he will drown eventually, putting a restriction on both options. On that day, however, I managed to get really close to an area where we knew there was an active checkpoint. I once again saw the potential, and I'm not kidding you, that entire day, around 10 hours long, I was non-stop swimming in that direction, with each attempt taking around 5 minutes, and I probably crashed the game like 20 to 30 times. If it was just a suspicion, I would have stopped already, but that one attempt where I got really close haunted me, and I just believed in it, so I continued. After a long day, I managed to get this. I actually managed to hit the cutscene trigger through the wall with an almost drowned Joel and an insanely tight angle, and also without crashing the game. I once again couldn't believe what the hell was going on with this game now. Matt was really surprised, and he was just asking me how in the hell I managed to maneuver my way there without crashing the game. I checked my PB and this skip actually saves 1.5 minutes, another big skip for the run. The setup for this skip was pretty precise since we needed to swim for quite some time, and the chance for a game crash was still pretty high, making this skip very dangerous since it comes up 1 hour and 20 minutes into the run. A few days later, I finally continued the grind, and on 22nd November 2023, I got a 2:25:16 with a successfully performed sewers skip. The amount of skips we had felt very high now. It's no longer only been the big 3 skips from back then, but instead a handful of big skips and a dozen of other tricks too. A few days later, I improved the time again and got a 2:25:01. On 26 November, I played around more with the sewer skip again, and I managed to optimize the movement, taking a more direct path to the next area, actually cutting another minute. So now the new sewer skip saves even more time. To prevent confusion with all the different sewer skips, this is what it saves. This updated sewer skip saves another minute over the previously shown method, 2.5 minutes over the sewers skip that Matt found in 2018, and 4 minutes compared to the glitchless route, making this one of the biggest skips in the game now and the biggest time save I have ever found. One day later, on 27th November 2023, I then got a groundbreaking run. Finally, after all these different route changes, after everything that has been found in the past months, I could finally add everything together and perform well too. I got a 2-minute PB, a 2:22.52, the first 2:22, also skipping 2:24 and 2:23 entirely. While I was very happy, there was a problem that occurred. Remember, Ant was also playing any percent at that time. He wanted to implement the new sewer skip into his runs as well, but when attempting it in practice, the game would literally always crash for him. At first I didn't give it too much attention because this skip crashes the game easily when having a wrong angle, a wrong timing for the pauses, etc. So I thought he must have had a wrong angle or wrong timing, which obviously is part of the process of learning something new. Watching his stream, it was also impossible for me to tell because the angle for the skip is actually so precise that as a viewer you can't tell by watching whether the angle is correct or not, because the visual cues we'd have were so small that you could only see them when you were playing on your own monitor. Through the stream in 1080p, it was not visible on stream. After a certain time, however, I had to admit that there was something off, because the angle didn't look off and the amount of crashes he'd get was way too much. Then I was also streaming and people started saying the weirdest things. I think it was Zilla who told me I should try the skip without having skins turned on for Joel and Ellie. I turned off the skins and the game actually started crashing every time for me too.
Wow. It really is because of that. Oh, that is so annoying, man.
Basically on that day we confirmed that sewer skip only works when you have custom skins turned on for Joel and Ellie. It has something to do with how the game renders and loads in the characters when entering the next area of the game. This was actually a problem, because in Last of Us you can only unlock skins after having finished the game at least once, meaning this makes them New Game Plus. Because of this I had to reject and delete my 3 latest PBs, we banned the use of skins for every new game run from this point onwards, and Sewer's skip would only get used for New Game Plus runs now. So my PB was back at a 2:25.44, 3 minutes slower than my PB with Sewer skip. Looking back at this now, it's insane what happened there, because we are actually just a few weeks away from the GDQ run now, and we have multiple new skips, rule changes, and we're even playing on a different console now. 2 days later everything was set and I got a 2:24.51. The run was very good until I lost a minute at science building skip. Whatever, still a 50 seconds PB and a PB that contains the updated route. So as if all of this wasn't enough already, there is one final thing coming up that would change this speedrun again. Museum skip. 3 years earlier, in 2021, Matt found a way to launch Joel up from outside the museum onto the museum, potentially saving 1.5 minutes. This skip, however, was insanely hard to get. Believe me, it was absurd. When he found it, I tried to get it on stream, and if I remember correctly, it took me 5 hours to just get it once. It was impossible to get a real setup for it. It was entirely random, and since then, no one has even tried to get anything out of it. From then on, the skip just got ignored. Now, during my grind, I played around with the dumpster here, making use of getting behind it by using a melee weapon, a method I saw Will-O-the-Wisp doing. I just sent this video to TLoU to show him that I got a funny launch and be like, oh, imagine it would go the opposite direction. TLoU was like, wait, how did you get behind the cart? Shouldn't it be possible to get a setup for museum skip then? Just a few hours later, TLoU posted it. A consistent setup for museum skip. Unbelievable. This run underwent so many changes, added so many new skips, and now even added the long time thought impossible skip to it. This run had everything now. Launches, out of bounds, chapter skips, fight skips, death warps, enemy despawns, teleports, small skips, big skips, just everything. This was the time when people started saying that after all those years, Last of Us any % runs finally were very different from glitchless runs, and it almost started looking like an Uncharted run with all its skips and glitches. A dream come true. Additionally, museum skip is really hard to perform. It is a consistent skip, but it is close to pixel perfect and requires lots of practice and a good setup. Not only did we add all those things, but remember when I did a run with the big 3 skips, Downtown skip, Bill's Trap skip and Pittsburgh skip, when Bill's Trap skip felt entirely random and like a coin flip? This changed as well. Not only did we now have very many skips in the run, all of them are consistent too, and the any % run is very skill based and execution heavy with only very little RNG. So the real and final grind could finally continue. On 1st December 2023, I got a 2:24:42, the first run with museum skip, getting a gold split there by 1 minute and 25 seconds, even though I took it slow. The run overall was actually very bad and only a PB because of the new time saves. I want to mention this here, I love runs like this. When you run a category after a long time or find something so big that a full run is almost guaranteed. See, I was over a minute ahead now, making all the 0.2 seconds micro optimizations unimportant, basically guaranteeing a full run, no matter if I make mistakes or get bad luck, as long as there are no major time losses, of course. These are the speedruns I enjoy the most. One day later, on 2nd December 2023, Ant actually beat my time and claimed back world record with a 2:23:38. With being over a minute faster, that run had quite a lead on my PB, and while I wasn't really scared of not being able to beat it, I 100% wanted to prevent to go to GDQ without being the world record holder. I'm not gonna lie to you, if I had to go to GDQ without being the world record holder at that point, it would have destroyed the entire event for me. Sounds harsh, but I had to make sure that won't happen. I had to. I had 6 more weeks. A few days later, I improved my time and got a 2:24:23. On 9th December, I got a 2:23:02 and finally claimed back world record, and I finally got a run that wasn't just a small PB by a few seconds. This run, unfortunately, was done offline. I was usually not doing offline runs anymore, but I was sick and couldn't go to work on that day, but my boss knows about my streams, so I didn't want to stream. This time in general was very heavy. I was sick, I was busy with university and work, and I also had to prepare a lot for the journey to Pittsburgh, documents I had to get and some planning. Also in December, my grandma died. To my surprise, considering everything that was going on at that time, I was still pretty relaxed. I think I was so confident about going to GDQ that I just had to push through. My mentality became the strongest it has ever been up until that point. After this, Ant has decided to stop running this category and did some any % New Game Plus runs, where he would also get the first sub 220 and then change categories again. I don't blame him, honestly, this category started to suck eventually. Don't get me wrong, from the strats, route, skips, etc. this was still a 10 out of 10 for me, but after implementing museum skip, the game out of nowhere started crashing insanely often. I'm not joking, I think during December alone I lost over 20 runs to game crashes, and the game crashed everywhere. Downtown skip, museum skip, slums, Pittsburgh, ranch. The weird thing was that it started crashing in places where it never crashed before, and it also crashed before even approaching museum, and I would always restart the console before runs. There was a PS5 update in 2023 that significantly improved load times for many older games, and Last of Us was also involved, so I thought it might be that, but I actually did a couple of runs on a PS4 again just for testing, and it crashed there too. I was messaging Thrill because I started going into an alert state. We were a few weeks away from GDQ, and out of nowhere it seemed impossible to do a stream of this speedrun without getting game crashes. I was a bit scared about the GDQ run and didn't know what to do. Thrill came up with a restart checkpoint at the beginning of the downtown area that might lower the crash rate, but that was not really confirmed. For now, I just had to continue and pray. It sucked, honestly. Some time has passed, and on 19th December 2023 I got a 2:22:52. This is the exact same time, by the way, that I got on the run with Source skip that got rejected. A few days later I got a pretty big PB with a 2:22:15, and just a few hours later, during the same stream, I got a 2:21:41, the first 2:21. I was happy with the time. Getting the first 2:21, getting all the skips, no game crash, another 2 PBs in one stream, finally getting a more optimized run and approaching Christmas and GDQ, finally securing world record and getting a bigger lead. However, there was one last thing. During the night from 29th to 30th December 2023, my last stream of the year, I started another run. my god. Yes. 220, 30, 90. Oh my fucking god, dude. This, in my 8.5 years of running this game, was the best run I have ever done. This run was just insane. It had absolutely everything I wished for. I'm really happy with how I played and everything just came together, and that on the day before New Year's Eve. This was my final PB before GDQ, and in the last 2 weeks before the event, I was just doing some practice. I'm gonna spoil it here, this run is actually still the world record. This run to this day is still unbeaten and still my PB and world record. I've never felt better with a run than with this one. Then, on 17th January 2024, I took my flight and headed to GDQ. As I said, I've uploaded an entire video about this journey, so I'm gonna keep it short here, but I have to say this. Going to GDQ and the entire journey prior to that has been the coolest thing I have ever done in my life. I view AGDQ 2024 as the place and time where everything I have done in the past decade culminated. Everything I have done in Last of Us and everything that I have found and learned got shown on that day. Also health-wise, the GDQ journey was something that a few years earlier was just unthinkable. A few years earlier, it was even unthinkable for me to just go outside or basically do anything in real life. The fact that I went to GDQ and went there on my own and did all of this is just absurd, looking back. So yeah, AGDQ 2024 for me was the culmination of everything, my life work, and I'm beyond proud of that. I also got lots of support during this. My mother was supporting me, telling me I should go to GDQ, my brother was supporting me. On my last day of work before GDQ, my boss shook my hands, wishing me good luck for it. On the last day of therapy before GDQ, my therapist was tapping my shoulder, wishing me good luck, saying I got this. I'm not gonna lie, when I was in America, on an entirely different continent, I felt the support of the people inside me. They gave me strength. And also you, the people watching my streams, followed me on that journey and supported me with my streams. Thank you. After GDQ, I was really looking forward to running the other categories again. I've never focused so much on a single category before, and in 2023, outside of that all difficulties speedrun, any percent was the only category I PB'd in, a thing that has not happened before in those 8 years. Especially considering all the game crashes I got, I was looking forward to the glitchless categories, but I first wanted to update my any percent New Game Plus time with all the new skips and also adding the new sewer skip there. When I got back to any percent New Game Plus, Ant's PB was a 219.49. On 25th January 2024, I got a 220.32, a PB by 5.5 minutes, but nowhere near what I wanted. Immediately on the next attempt during the same stream, at 5 AM, I got another PB with a 220.13. A few days later, I got a pretty big PB and claimed back world record with a 218.53, the first 218. This run had a second try museum skip, which wasted 50 seconds, and the category hopping was long gone, so I continued grinding down my time. 4 days later, I got another PB with a 218.22. After that, I was a bit burnt out. I focused so much on this during the past months and also had stuff to do in university, so I took a break for a few months and played games like Cyberpunk and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I came back in May, continuing with any percent New Game Plus, and on 9th May 2024, I got a 217.14, the first 217 and a pretty big PB. The run was amazing actually. If it wasn't for that 30-second time loss right at the end, this probably would have been my last run in this category. But since I had that time loss there and the 216 seemed possible, I wanted to go for it. On 24th May, I did another offline attempt because I felt sick and got a 217.09. Then, on 4th August 2024, 9 years after my first speedrun and 1 year ago now, I got a 216.47, the first 216, and finally, after focusing on any percent non-stop for over a year, I reached my goal time for this category too. This was an amazing feeling. My PBs were multiple minutes ahead of second place, and this run is also still my PB and world record today. I also want to add something here that definitely is worth mentioning. While my any percent PBs from last year still stand today, in September 2024 I once again turned the any percent route upside down. I once again had a moment where I was just messing around in game, and then I got something to happen before the outside high school fight that let me clip through the gate. This wasn't new. I remember Matt uploaded a video of this ages ago, I don't know, like 9 years ago or so. The reason why this was special now is because I actually noticed how I did this. When Matt got it back then, he thought he pressed square really fast or something like that. I thought it was exclusive to this gate, and since there are no skips or checkpoints there, it was basically useless. However, when I reproduced this, I noticed it was just a normal melee attack and that it had to do with my positioning towards Bill. I also noticed it was the upgraded melee weapon that altered the animation, skipping Joel a few frames ahead, which makes the game clip him through the gate. In the last few years we always knew about some areas that were technically skippable, for example anything that TLoU showed in his video if Last of Us had Uncharted skips. Among these was the final sewers fight. TLoU had a clip sitting on his PC for multiple years where a player, I don't know his name, managed to make the game clip Joel through the wall, skipping the fight. For many years no one managed to replicate this. We tried so many different things there to somehow clip through the wall or deload the area, but nothing worked. After clipping through the gate in Bill's town, I was like, wait, let's try that somewhere else. And after a couple attempts, this happened.
Open it from the other side. Make it fast. Come on, Sam.
I actually managed to clip out of the fight. That feeling was insane, let me tell you. Not only did I clip through, I also kept the sprint speed. The sniper cutscene is active, so I could just run there. After timing it, I noticed this saves around 2 minutes. A new skip has been found, and not only that, a new clipping technique too. Of course, I immediately told the others and shared the video. TLoU then noticed that this works on almost any wall of the game. All you need is an upgraded melee weapon, sprint speed and an NPC. When TLoU and me were working on the Bill's town skip, TLoU would often mention something like, oh, if we could go through this gate, we could skip this and that, etc. And now with this new method, this was finally possible. He optimized the Bill's town skip once again, and do you remember when I found the first version of Bill's town skip where our movement speed was very low and we would only save around 30 seconds? Now we have a fully extended and fast version of it. We went from a version with slow jog over a version with a normal jog to this newest version where we have a full sprint speed for the entire skip. This also makes the quick turn deloads obsolete, and we now use multiple melee weapon wall clips to get through the chapter, saving another 1.5 minutes. The new sewer skip, which will only be used for any percent because for any percent New Game Plus we have the extended sewer skip, and the extended Bill's town skip aren't the only new things though. There's another one. During a stream I was playing around with it and TLoU was in my stream. I tried to clip through the gate in the first Pittsburgh fight, and then after some time this happened.
Come on. But the bad thing is...
There was only one problem with it. The triangle prompt on the door was inactive, so we couldn't continue. I turned off the stream because I wanted to watch the Death Stranding 2 show, but while watching it I kept trying, and eventually I managed to get through the wall. Overnight, TLoU optimized it, and we now have a fully extended Pittsburgh skip, which now adds a few melee weapon wall clips and basically begins when the chapter starts and ends after the old Pittsburgh skip, which has a total runtime of over 4 minutes without hitting a single checkpoint, meaning it puts you back to the beginning of the chapter when failing at the end. This also makes the bookstore skip Matt found obsolete. This new wall clip technique and these new skips, however, were found after I got my PBs, and since then no one has tried to route them into the run or to beat the world record. The skips are pretty tough, and getting all the wall clips first try sounds like an insane task to be honest, but one day I will try to do that. Also, to this day there has been no proper testing for any of the Last of Us skips on the PS5 Pro. I just wanted to leave all this here and at least mention the new skips. So after getting my any percent New Game Plus PB, right on the next day I came back to running all collectibles. I chose this category because all collectibles uses some skips and glitches, so I wanted to do this first since I'm used to this now. The world record at this point was a 2:59:54 by end. He got the first sub 3 for all collectibles, but his time was almost 3 years old and therefore didn't have Science Building skip and Henry Betrayal skip. My PB was still the 310 from 2019 and there were multiple people who were ahead of me on the leaderboards for this category now. Therefore it wasn't too hard to get a new PB, and on 5th August 2024 I got a 256.26. I didn't expect to bring this down by that much, but as I said earlier and as you could see with my any percent grind, I didn't want to stop because I had the world record. I also wanted to have an actual good time. So I continued with all collectibles and a few days later I got a 254.55, a 1.5 minute PB and a time I was very happy with. This is still the world record today. After all collectibles, I finally returned to glitchless runs. I hadn't run this category in almost 3 years, and it's been 2 years since I had ran any glitchless category. I also wanted to take the world record back, which I did on 14th August 2024 with a 246.42. In the following weeks I improved my PB several times, getting a 246.38, then a 246.16, a 246.15, and then I wanted to go for a 245 as my final goal. On 13th September 2024, I finally got a 245.47, a really good time that also still is the world record now. For glitchless New Game Plus and was still holding the world record with his 244.56. Remember, the last time I grinded this category it felt cursed to me, and for this category I didn't feel like grinding it down by much, so I focused on getting the world record, which I got after a few days with a 244.41. Then in September 2024, Atlas released the demo for Metaphor Refantasio, a game I was hyped for since I really enjoyed the demo. I thought it might be fun to route the demo on its hardest difficulty, so I did that and ran it for a few days. I first got a 43.43, then a 40.15, a 39.29, a 39.15 and lastly a 38.10. which I thought was pretty solid and left it there. Technically these were all world records, but obviously it was a demo and nothing serious. It was fun though. After this, I then improved my glitchless New Game Plus time one more time on 21st October with a 2:44:31, which is also still the world record today. Then, 2 years after my last PB in this category, I finally returned to grounded speedruns. Fun fact, 2023, the year of my any % grind and GDQ preparation, was the only year since 2015 where I haven't gotten a single grounded PB. In every other year, I have at least gotten one PB. Anthony's world record at this point was a 2:47:55, a time that was absolutely nuts at its time, and many people said it would be unbeatable. My PB was old and obsolete at this point, so I just focused on playing well and getting better times. On 28th October I got a 1.6 second PB with a 2:49:27. 2 weeks later I got a 2:49:20. After that I took a break for around 3 months, but this time this is not entirely true. While I wasn't doing any runs, from December onwards, similar to the any % findings I had at the end of 2023, I put the grounded category upside down and found multiple new things that would save so much time that any run that was done was now basically obsolete. I found multiple new strats, but the biggest thing I found then was the new David strat, a fully consistent 12 seconds time save. Of course, 12 seconds sound pretty small compared to the 3 minute time saves I found for any %, but for many years, Last of Us glitchless and grounded runs were at a state where even a 0.5 second time save felt really nice, since glitchless has a limit on what we can achieve, so finding a 12 seconds time save along multiple other new strats was huge and would change this category a lot. That also meant Ant's 2:47 run was very beatable now. During this time I stopped doing full runs and for now focused on IL runs, which stands for individual level. I felt like there were so many new things in the run and so many changes that it would make sense to focus on one chapter at a time, so I can develop a good feeling and implement the new things step by step. This was incredibly helpful, and doing this I even found more new things. I got the IL world records for every single chapter and improved a lot. In retrospect, many people told me doing these IL runs was the best thing I could have done. I've improved so much and gained a new height of comfort with the strats and the route. After finally reaching all my goals with the IL runs, I returned to full game runs in March, and I instantly crushed my previous PB with a 51-second PB, getting a 2:48.29. Not only my first 2:48, but also a sub 2:48.30. Just a few days later, I got a 2:48.16, and another week later a 2:48.10, and another week later a 2:48.07. In the meantime, because of all the new findings, Ant also came back to this category and improved his PB twice, the world record now being a 2:47.37. On 28th March 2025, I got a 2:47.51. Let's go. Oh my fucking god, dude. Let me lower the game volume. This run is the closest time to a grounded world record since my 2:56.27 in 2017. During these months I improved my time by so much and was really happy with my improvements. The funny thing about this is that Ant got his PB 2 days before my run, and in my run I actually lost 12 seconds in hospital to a kinda funny movement mistake. Whoops. I wouldn't have gotten world record with this, even without the movement mistake. I just want to say how close this was. After this run, I initially wanted, or rather had to, take a break because exams started in university. Unfortunately, it took a bit longer than expected and then I was already out of it, which means this is the final run of this video, and as of now, when making this video, I still haven't returned. I will return soon, however, in September or so, I don't know yet. Running this game for 10 years now feels so good and I don't regret a single thing. I know speedrunning has different reputations among the society, but I always found speedrunning very important. Not many people think about the positive side effects speedrunning has next to its negative side effects. We are living in a time where people become less and less patient, only being able to focus on one thing for a few minutes. And then there are us speedrunners, people who just do multiple hours long speedruns with high concentration. We're living in a time where people spend way too much time trying to not annoy or disappoint other people. And then there are us speedrunners, people who have to deal with disappointments daily as part of their hobby, but as a result, learn how to deal with it and use it to our strength. The precise inputs, diving deep into the game or even behind the game's mechanics, working together with other players to optimize the game and get the absolute best possible outcome out of something, working hard for months or even years to achieve a goal, think around the corner to get something to work, and finally, the passion that makes us put everything together. On top of that, the entertainment factor for others that comes through streaming, uploading videos, chatting or speedrunning events. Yeah, I view speedrunning as one of the most impactful hobbies a human being can have, and as a hobby that develops and enhances a human in various different ways. Lastly, there's one more thing. I alone am not entirely responsible for who I have become as a speedrunner. There are people I've met along those 10 years who have deeply influenced me and led me through this. So now I want to name the speedrunners who had the biggest impact on me on my way as a speedrunner, and I'm going to say a few words. Gunnermaniac is a Pokemon speedrunner, and not only does he speedrun for over 12 years now, he's also always been among the best players of it. He's speedrunning my childhood games, and not only has he always been one of my most watched streamers in the past 9 years or so, what I value the most is the passion he shows. What he expresses is the purest form of ambition. When he's speedrunning, it seems like the world around him has shut down, and the only important thing right now is to get that world record. This shows in his 1:54:01 Pokemon Yellow speedrun from 2018, for example, that I was watching live, by the way, where 45 minutes into the run, he just turns off his webcam to pee into a bucket. I'm not saying that to make fun of it, I'm serious when I say that. Gunnermaniac doing stuff like that allowed me to feel more chill during speedruns and on stream. Watching him made me realize that I should not give any fucks about anything, really. Who cares about how I look, what my eyes do when I'm focused on the game, or what others say? Let's just fucking play the game, try to play good and have fun. Later on in the run, his friends just visited him, and just look at this. You can clearly feel how intense this is, and the vibe is just something else.
No. Yes.
Yes!
By the way, he had over 1,000 viewers during this, and the 750,000 views are well deserved. Saiyans, next to running some other games too, is a Kingdom Hearts speedrunner. Same as Gunnermaniac, he's also always been among the best players of it, and he's also speedrunning for over 12 years now and very passionate. Earlier in this video I talked about some of my health struggles and they caused me to spend lots of time at home, and the thing is, Saiyans is Australian, which means when it was early in the day for me, that was the time when he was streaming. I ended up watching him a lot, and him grinding down his Kingdom Hearts 1 time was a pleasure for me to watch. His Kingdom Hearts 1 streams are among my favorite memories when I think about speedrunning in general, and I learned a lot from him. Not to forget that in 2016 I was also speedrunning Kingdom Hearts 1. He also recently announced that he's becoming a father soon, and that his speedrunning career will end there. Saiyans mate, if you're watching this, thank you for everything, man. I wish you and your family all the best. Frowny is a Final Fantasy IX speedrunner, and his most active years were 2016 and 2017. Back then, a sub 9 hours run in Final Fantasy IX was the goal many players had. Frowny was among the few who achieved that, and he was one of the speedrunners who was insanely talented and entertaining too. I can't even explain what it was, but the vibe of his streams were special to me. He sometimes was just like, cheers, started drinking and a 9-hour speedrun at the same time. His stream had a special atmosphere. I have so much respect for him, and he's one of my most valued speedrunners. Unfortunately, one day he just disappeared. His last stream took place almost 8 years ago, at the end of 2017, and since then I have not heard anything of him anymore. I'm not joking when I'm saying this. Since then, there hasn't been a single month where I didn't think about him. I can't even tell what it is, but he had left such a big impact on me. I'm still sad that he's just gone. Luzbel, formerly Luzbelheim, is a Final Fantasy speedrunner, mainly running Final Fantasy 7, 8 and 9. He's speedrunning for over 11 years now and basically has always been the best at whatever game or category he was playing. He reached multiple milestones, like the first sub 9 hours run in Final Fantasy 9, or holding the world records for Final Fantasy 7, 8 and 9 all at the same time. And what always made me look up to him the most was his incomprehensible skill. What he's probably known for the most is his menuing. People said for fun that when Luzbel is menuing blindfolded, he's still faster than any other runner when they are not blindfolded. And while that is supposed to be a funny exaggeration, this is closer to the truth than you might think. With Matsuki, Tojo and Karakarn, he was running Final Fantasy IX at AGDQ 19, and as an incentive, he did the notorious Pandemonium menu blindfolded. He did this in front of over 100,000 live viewers, and this clip ended up being the most watched clip on the GDQ channel at that time. Luzbel is by far the most impactful speedrunner for me. I don't even know how to put this into words, I just always admired him. He has always been the biggest motivational factor for me. I'm not joking, sometimes when I was taking a break from speedrunning, thinking about him motivated me to come back and to get better times. Trying to become a better player, both on the controller and mentally, he is who motivated me. He's also my most watched speedrunner, and I can't even describe how important Luzbel and his speedruns are for my life. Arims, next to some other games, is an Uncharted speedrunner, mainly running Uncharted 1, 2 and 3. These games are among my most played games ever, and when I'm watching people play them, I can sense every button press inside my body. And when I watch Arims play, it's just a treat. He's playing so well, watching him is just satisfaction. He also has that special something where whatever he does, he becomes the best at it. At one point he was so good and had such a lead on other runners that people started questioning him, saying he's playing with mouse and keyboard, for example. He's just the GOAT of Uncharted speedrunning. We both also seem to have a similar taste. We both like Uncharted, Last of Us, Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy, for example. And on top of that, he's just a nice guy, and having him around me in this speedrunning universe for the last 9 years or so has just been a pleasure. Anthony Caliber and me definitely had some ups and downs in the last 10 years. He has always been my biggest rival and the competition was real. Watching his 309.50 in 2015 was how I learned about speedrunning in the first place, and he's always played a big role in this game and in speedrunning. What I respect a lot about Ant is his stamina and fortitude. While I always took some breaks from time to time, he never stopped. We also share the same passion, which is The Last of Us, and he has done so much for this game. Whether it be finding strats, getting good runs or bringing this game to a wider audience. MadMad is a speedrunner, and if I would now mention every game he's ever speedran, we would sit here until my 20 years anniversary. I know him from running Last of Us, of course, and he's a special player for me because he was among the first Last of Us speedrunners and therefore one of the first speedrunners I've encountered and talked to. He has done so much for the entire speedrunning community, it's incredible. The amount of strats, glitches, skips, etc. that he has found over the last decade is just out of this world. As I said, he has played many games, but believe me when I say that without him, The Last of Us and Uncharted speedruns would not be what they are today, and he held world records in these games too. Not only did he do a lot gameplay wise, in my opinion he is also one of the most entertaining streamers and speedrunners. TLoU UK, formerly The Thrillness, has also played many games, but I know him from Last of Us and Uncharted. Thrill is probably one of the most underrated speedrunners out there, which might be because he hasn't really done many speedruns in the past decade, since he's been focusing on glitch hunting instead, but what he did just to Last of Us and Uncharted alone is already insane. When talking about the number of skips and glitches he found in Last of Us and Uncharted, we're easily talking triple digits. He was the first person who found a skip in Last of Us, and for any percent runs, he found the biggest time saves of every Last of Us player ever. And also in Uncharted, it feels like for almost every single skip, he had something to do with it.
Yeah, this is new. Holy fuck! What the fuck? Holy shit!
Thrill and Matt are friends and often work on skips together, so from the outside it's sometimes hard to tell who found what. I also have lots of respect for Thrill because he started speedrunning in 2006 and the amount of stuff he found over the course of almost 20 years and across multiple games is just crazy. I don't know any other player in the world who has more knowledge about games than him.